across the UK, on DAB+, on YouTube, on the app, on your mobile, the home of common sense. This is Talk.
Well, a very good morning. This is Talk. I'm Peter Cardwell. Thank you so much for your company. There's loads to discuss this Saturday morning, including the latest on Andrew. We can't bear him either. Norfolk locals have slammed Andy. That's the front page of The Sun. William and Kate pushed for Andrew to be ousted, says the Daily Mail. No great shock there. And the I paper says Andrew to get a £558,000 payout for Royal Lodge, but now faces a huge repair bill. There's loads to get into in all of that. We'll also be talking to Dame Emily Thornberry, the chairwoman of the Foreign Affairs Select Committee, about all sorts of issues, including Rachel Reeves, the big controversy this week in the Labour Party. On our debate desk, Matthew Goodwin-Freeman and Andy Williams will be here talking about what you want to talk about, as well as the Royal British Legion volunteers abused by left-wing idiots while they put up Remembrance Day poppies in a town. What on earth was going on there? We'll talk as well about NHS staff taking 620,000 sick days for mental health in a month. There's a lot to talk about. We'll talk to Rupert Bell about Andrew. We'll talk about foreign prisoners as well. Those numbers have gone up to a huge extent. And Zara Sultana comparing Nigel Farage to Hitler. You wanted to talk about that yesterday. What do you think about it? Zara Sultana, the MP for your party, Jeremy Corbyn's party, and she has compared Nigel Farage to Hitler, saying he is a fascist. Lots to talk about this morning. What is on the tip of your tongue? Let me know your thoughts. 0344 499 1000 is the number to call. You can text me 87222 with the word talk in your text. You can tweet me at talkTV, follow me at Peter Cardwell. You can send me a voice note. Remember, less than a minute, please. Tech Up Dave goes through all of those. We'll play out as many voice notes as we can. 0344 499 1000. You can also send me a WhatsApp text message on that number or give me a ring on that number. So plenty to discuss between now and 1 o'clock here on Talk. Stay with us. Well, thank you so much for your company this morning. I really appreciate it. I'm here right through until 1 o'clock today and indeed tomorrow between 10 and 1. And as you know, we often get top politicians on this programme. Emily Thornberry, Dame Emily Thornberry, is the chairwoman of the Foreign Affairs Select Committee, and she is with me now. Emily, good morning.
Good morning.
There's so much to discuss. Let's talk about Andrew first. An MP's apparently pushing for him to be removed from the royal line of succession. Given everything that's happened this week since that bombshell statement on Thursday, what do you think should happen now?
I think if there was any sort of chance of him succeeding to become king, then it would be an issue. But he's, isn't it 8th or something? And so, I mean, the chances of him actually succeeding to the throne are kind of nil. So I think there's other things that Parliament should be doing.
Yeah, it's not the most exciting or important issue, certainly, and it's unlikely that the 7 people in the line of succession won't make it. I wonder, Emily, what you think about Andrew and what he could do now, because my view would be, and I wonder what yours is, my view is actually there's quite a lot that he could do. He could talk to the American authorities. He could talk to the victims of Jeffrey Epstein. He could talk to the authorities in this country as well. He could give chapter and verse and indeed emails and any correspondence in regard to Jeffrey Epstein. What do you think of that matter?
Yeah, I mean, I think all of that is true, and I would agree with you on that. And I would just say one other thing, which is, it is remarkable, isn't it, how the 2 people who were friends of Epstein who have had to face some consequences have been 2 Brits, have been Peter Mandelson and Andrew. And yet we've yet to see any Americans at all. And that's very odd, given that, you know, Epstein was American, and we know there are a large number of men who were involved in this. And yet the Americans have still not been able to hold anyone to account at all. And that is, I think that's worth noting.
It is worth noting that. Why do you think that is, Emily? Why do you think that is, Emily?
I mean, I don't know. But when I hear, you know, congressmen and women sort of, you know, po-facedly saying, oh, well, you know, he has an obligation to do this, that and the other. I'm not saying that I don't agree, because I absolutely do. But it does make me think, what are you doing about the Americans? I mean, what are you doing about the Americans? isn't it about time that you also, followed our example, I suppose, and took this properly and seriously, and not just as a party political matter, which sometimes I wonder whether that's kind of part of it.
A party political matter? How do you think it's been weaponized in that way?
I think that Donald Trump in the first place talked about Epstein because there were leading Democrats who were seen to be friends with Epstein. And then it turns out that actually maybe he is a friend of Epstein, and then the Democrats seem to be, very much in favor of fight. Do you know what I mean? I think it's all very unedifying, and a long way from considering the women and the victims.
I think they have been forgotten in all of this, and I know that protecting women and sexual violence against women is something that you have fought against your whole career. I want to talk about that more in a second. In terms of the party political aspect of this, Emily, I do wonder what you think about Peter Mandelson in this country. Should he lose his peerage?
No, I don't think so, but I do think that it was right that he was taken away from his job as ambassador, and we will be, in my committee on Monday, we are looking at what was the vetting process and is it adequate. And we've recently received a letter saying that they're going to change the processes in the future. And so we're going to be asking, well, what does that mean? Because it does seem to me that all it took was Googling him, and then all sorts of questions would have arisen. And I don't even know if that is the sort of thing which is done. I think that I suspect that the traditional vetting process is traditional, and is, what kind of family have you got, who are your friends, getting you to fill in a form, making sure that you're telling the truth. But whether or not you have, I'm not suggesting that Peter Mandelson did, sorry, just make sure this is clear.
No, of course,
but
of course.
Whether or not you have addictions of various sorts, or particular friendships, or what these people may have been doing. Looking into all of that. I don't know whether they really do that, and if they do it, whether they do it sufficiently well. And I think it's particularly important when you are not necessarily appointing a civil servant who has got a track record within the civil service and has been vetted many times, and everybody knows who they are, compared to somebody coming in from the outside world into a very senior job. What kind of vetting do you do then? Because, as I say, if he'd been put in front of our committee, which is what we wanted before he was sent off to America, we would have just got onto our phones, looked up on Google, found out what it says, and then asked him some questions. And he might have answered them honestly. Let's hope he would have. But whatever he had said, it would have been on the record. And that is an important part of this.
I've seen you at those committees, Emily, and you take no prisoners. I'm glad I'm asking the questions this morning rather than you, let me tell you. In regard to Keir Starmer, I just wonder whether his judgment is right. We've got a number of different things. We've got the Mandelson decision to appoint him despite knowing various things. We've got the fact that on Wednesday evening he rushed out a piece of paper, he rushed out a letter to Rachel Reeves, perhaps to calm the markets, maybe that was in his mind, in regard to Rachel Reeves, and saying that she had done nothing wrong. Then, I don't think really she has done much wrong, but obviously there were going to be more questions on Thursday and into Friday in all of that. I just wonder whether Rachel Reeves' judgment, Keir Starmer's judgment, are things you would question.
So I think that you're only as good as the information you're given. And I think that the Prime Minister only has a limited amount of time to do his own primary research. He has to rely on what people say to him. So, and I think that, it's almost impossible to imagine how busy and how many subjects the Prime Minister has to get on top of at all times. So you do need to make sure that the people around you are good and give you the very best information. And there have to be consequences if people don't give proper information. So I do think that it's important that we look into Mandelson and what was known and what wasn't known, because for many, many reasons. But I don't think that you can just point the finger at the Prime Minister and say, aha, it's all your fault. In the end, he's the Prime Minister, I appreciate, and in some ways he's responsible for whatever the government does. But he's only a human being. I think when it comes to Rachel Reeves, I mean, didn't he go off and put this matter in front of the ethics advisor?
Yeah, who
And
said
the
it was
ethics,
fine, and then
yeah.
it turned out actually they're going to reopen the investigation as well the next day. So this really does seem as if it was quickly, let's nip this in the bud, and then actually, hold on, there are more questions. And you may or may not know, Emily, but I worked in government for 3.5 years as a special advisor, and what I did in those kind of situations, as I'm sure your teams have done behind the scenes as well, if there's an issue of controversy, you say, what are the hostile questions that are going to be asked? What are the press going to ask us tomorrow? And prepare for that. And I'm not sure Number 10 prepared for those eventualities.
I mean, actually, what we would do is always, I'm told, I had a member of staff who was very experienced, and he said that what you do is you look at everything.
Yeah.
You do a full investigation as fast as you possibly can, and you say, right, how many legs has this story got?
Yes.
You know, what are all the various aspects of it? Let's get it all out now, because the last thing we want is for a story to carry on because it's only partially been disclosed. We need to know everything about it as early as possible and then make a comment. We don't go in half-cocked. I think that's probably a lesson to learn from this.
Do you think Keir Starmer's a good Prime Minister?
I think that he is exactly what we as a country want, which is, you know, after all the chaos of the Conservatives, after Boris Johnson and Liz Truss, and I mean, it was just the whole panto melodrama.
Surely there's been a bit of a pantomime since then.
I don't think it's...
Angela Rayner resigning, for example, I mean, should Starmer have stood by her? Was letting her go just a weak thing to do?
Okay, so hang on. Let me finish.
Sure.
I mean, what I'm saying is that I think that after all of that, you know, after all of the I mean, I don't agree with you that it's at the same level.
Okay.
And I think that he comes in and he has a stability about him. You know, what you see is what you get. There's no side to him. There's just like, I am committed to public service. I am doing the best that I can in very difficult circumstances. I mean, you know, when we were elected, we had the highest tax rate, we had the highest amount of debt, you know, and public services are on their knees. I mean, the country had never been in such an economic mess, and it's going to take a while to dig us out of that. And it is very difficult. And in the meantime, of course, there are people making mistakes, people having to resign. That's the kind of, I'm afraid, what happens when you're in government, you know. In the end, you know, people kind of want their politicians to be human, but they also want us to be perfect. And there is a bit of tension there. I do think sometimes, particularly journalists, hold us to such a high standard that it's really not, it's not humanly possible.
But you do want people with good judgment, and you want to be able to trust them. And I can tell you, Emily, a lot of our viewers and listeners do not trust Keir Starmer.
I understand that. And I appreciate that many members of the public don't trust any politicians. But you know, what can you do? I mean, you're called to public service. You want to try and do the best for the country. You want to try and make things better, you know, and you try to do it against a backdrop of increased cynicism about government. And part of that is, you know, we've elected a Labour government. We expect things to be transformed, and we can't do it overnight, because there's no money, because the debt is so high. You know, already, you know, the national debt is so high that has to be paid off, and yet taxes are at the highest level they've been. We have to put money into public services, but where do you start? Because it's all such a mess.
Well, we'll find out in the budget next month. Just before you go, Emily, I know you're chairwoman of the Foreign Affairs Select Committee, and I know you will be as concerned as I am about what's happening in both Sudan and Nigeria. As someone who has railed against sexual violence for a long time, for a lot of your career, this being a key element of both those conflicts, what do you think the UK government should do in both the Sudanese and Nigerian examples?
I think that in relation to Sudan, I think we've already committed to putting in a very large amount of money in order to try to stabilise areas, in order to look after refugees, in order to make sure that they have some sort of security. And obviously, I mean, everybody needs to have security, but the women in particular need to be, particularly if they have no other family, we need to make sure that we protect them. And I think that in Nigeria, we have witnessed the most appalling sexual violence, the wholesale kidnapping of teenage girls and taking them off into the jungle, and and keeping them there and then sending them back eventually once money has been handed over and they come back having been abused and raped with children, and then their communities turning their back on them. It's such a tragedy. It's very difficult to even know where to start with that.
And you've spoken up on that this morning. You've spoken up on it on a number of times. You have not been found wanting on this. Do you think Parliament, the Prime Minister, are taking both those issues seriously? They're two of the biggest stories in the world at the moment. And I wonder whether they're getting even nearly the attention, and the media is guilty of this too, in regard to what should be talked about, especially when you think about how much we talk about, and rightly talk about, for example, the Middle East or American politics.
So I think that with Yvette Cooper coming into the Foreign Office, one of the things that she said was one of her priorities will be, as it was in the Home Office, violence against women and girls. And there are, as you say, so many priorities when you're Foreign Secretary, and there's so many different things going on, but one of her top three was talking about violence against women and girls. And today, I think, she was in the Middle East, and she was talking to Middle East countries who do have a lot of influence, we know, in Sudan, and speaking up about the abuse of women.
Yeah. Emily, thank you for your time this morning. I really appreciate it. That's Emily Thornberry there, Dame Emily Thornberry, who's chairwoman of the Foreign Affairs Select Committee. What do you think about what she was saying there? Let me know your thoughts. 0344 499 1000 is the number to call. Plenty to talk about on the debate desk with Matthew Goodwin-Freeman and Andy Williams, who are coming up in just a minute. Stay with us.
Big news coming this December. Our talkTV app is moving to the Talk app. You can watch, catch up and listen to all your favourite shows and podcasts anytime, anywhere, all on the Talk app. From Monday, 1st of December, the talkTV app will no longer exist, so don't miss out. So head over to your App Store or Google Play and search Talk now.
across the UK, on DAB+, on YouTube, on the app, on your mobile, the home of common sense. This is Talk.
Well, thank you so much for your company this morning. I'm Peter Cardwell. This is Talk, and I'm here right through until 1 o'clock. Thank you to everybody who's been in touch, including someone who says, morning, Peter, what a show. Good, honest, common sense. Is Dame Emily totally ignorant of Starmer's lies, deceit and backtracking? Is there any care for the teenagers raped in South Africa in this country? We have enough problems. We can't take on the world. Should she listen to herself after these comments? Another disregard for the victims of this country. I'm so angry I've had to abandon my breakfast. Becca in Norfolk says sending more money to other countries that are experiencing abuse of women and religious conflict. However, in 25 days in this country, people are going to be screwed over by the government. How about keeping money in our country for its citizens, says Becca in Norfolk. Well, thank you, Becca. Paul in Fife. Emily Thornberry is deluded after years of chaos under the Tories. Keir Starmer is exactly what the country needs. Unbelievable self-denial. The country has been a madhouse since the Labour Party took power. That is Paul in Fife there. Called to public service, says Dave in Dorset. They kick, scream and fight to start a political career. Then the country suffers from how they think we should conduct our lives. Hypocrites, says Dave in Dorset. And a final one just for the meantime. Emily is quite correct that the level of comedy and trust isn't the same as with the Tories. It's worse. Well, there we are. That's says Steve in his opinion. Well, thank you so much to everybody who has been in touch. We'll get to more of your calls, text, tweets, and don't forget you send your voice notes in as well, 0344 499 1000. But for the meantime, let's go to the debate desk. Matthew Goodwin-Freeman is with us. Do you ever not wear a Union Jack t-shirt? How many of them do you have?
Oh, probably 10, 15. My entire wardrobe is just different versions of the Union Jack on different colours and things like that.
Red, white and blue is your colour palette.
It's just clearly a far-right cupboard, so...
Okay. I remember asking Alex Salmond how many, ages ago, years ago, about 15 years ago, how many Salter ties he had. He had, the Scottish flag, the Salter, and he said he only had 4, which I thought was a bit low.
I've only got 2 Union Jack ties, but I'll make sure to get a couple more then.
I only wear ties for funerals, weddings, meeting royalty and court appearances. Andy Williams is also with us, political commentator. How are you this morning?
I'm very good, thank you.
Yeah, I'll be the judge of that. Thank you.
Let's see, shall we?
Well, indeed. Let's talk about Prince Andrew.
Let's go on. Speaking of closets and skeletons.
We can't bear him either. Norfolk locals slam Andy. He'll move in with his 72 teddies to Sandringham. William and Kate pushed for Andrew to be ousted. The Prince and Princess of Wales made it clear they want a clean break away from Andrew, and that's the only way the royal family can move forward. That's what the Mail is saying. I wonder what you think of that. And Andrew to get, not Andy Williams sadly, to get a £558,000 payout for Royal Lodge.
It is frustrating that, by the way, because Prince Andrew and I are now both, Andrew and I both now have the same name.
I mean, he did before, really, as well. I mean, it was
we did, but he had that, the Prince.
The Prince in front of it. Yeah. The Andrew formerly known as Prince.
I get the same with Matt Goodwin, but it's not anywhere near as bad as Prince Andrew. I'd rather be, compared to Matt Goodwin than Andrew. I think
the real problem is in 1993, if you're going along and everyone goes, oh, hi, Fred, how are you? How's everything? And then, there's a big news story and your name's actually Fred West and you've done nothing wrong. Actually, believe it or not, I know we're off topic here, but we'll come back in a minute. I spoke to a guy in New Zealand called David Gray, and I said, oh, David Gray, I was on a trip to New Zealand.
Babylon.
Yeah. I said, oh, like the singer. I said, no, it's worse than that. There's a serial killer in New Zealand called David Gray, who did horrible things to people that I won't talk about at 26 minutes past 10 in the morning. And there's not a lot happens in New Zealand. It's a beautiful, wonderful country, but news is not. It's not a big news country. And this trial was followed very, very closely by so many people, and everyone was saying, oh, David, are you gonna cut me up and put in the freezer or whatever? And basically he had to take 6 months off work with stress because so many people were sending him memes, they were sending him jokes, they were texting him everything and he was just so stressed by the whole thing. He had to take time off work. So
that's bad.
Yeah, I had a friend at school whose surname was Trimble as well, so in 1998 in Northern Ireland you can imagine how that went for them. Right then, let's talk about the actual news. Has Andrew done enough, or is there more he can do? Matthew?
I actually said 2 weeks ago, I think it was on your show, I said, this is what needs to happen. Andrew has to leave Royal Lodge, he needs to go, he needs to cut away, he's got to go back into effectively being an ordinary citizen in the country. That is what the public wanted, and it's finally been done. I think well done to the royal family for taking this decision. It's hard, this at the end of the day is the King's brother. Yep. It's a real big decision to make, but I actually think this might finally be the line in the sand where the story dies. Andrew, I hope just drifts away and stays out of the public
surely
light.
There's more
I
he can
don't
do.
trust
I was
he
talking
will.
to Emily Thornbury about this a second ago. Surely, I mean, isn't it ironic that the only 3 people who've actually been held to any level of account for the whole Epstein thing are 3 British people? Ghislaine Maxwell rotting in jail, where she should be as a child abuser. Prince Andrew, who denies all the allegations against him, and Lord Mandelson as well. 3 British people. I mean, there's so many more people. Also, Andrew himself, I would argue, and I wonder what you think about this, Andy Williams, I would argue there's a lot more he can do. He could talk to the authorities in America, he could answer law enforcement, he could answer law enforcement in this country, he could surrender all his emails, he could come clean about the whole thing.
I couldn't agree more. And the reality is he spent £12 million of his mum's money to try and make this go away. It hasn't gone away.
He gave £12 million, well, I don't know if the money was ever actually received, but to someone he claimed to never have met.
Exactly. Now, but absolutely, he could do all of those things. There's obviously now a push for him to go and testify in the United States, which, to put it mildly, would be a very uncomfortable experience for him. I don't think this is the end of it, because there clearly is more to come out. And I say that not with any firm knowledge, but we're 6 years on from the Newsnight interview, and there has been drip, drip, drip.
In the papers every weekend.
Yeah, for years and years. And the problem is there's been so many very, very, very well-known, powerful, influential people involved in this. And many of them haven't really been touched by it. You know, people who've, and I'm just saying exactly, people who've flown on the plane.
They were on the plane, they were on the islands.
Yeah, all sorts of people. So I don't think it's the end of it. Obviously, it's the right step. You know, let him fester in his irrelevance. And I think that is the thing that, for him, disgrace is one thing, but the thing that Andrew and people like him hate the most is the idea that they're irrelevant. And actually, he now has to spend the rest of his life playing video games, because apparently that's how he spends his days.
Call of Duty.
Playing video games.
Somewhat ironically, if he'd heeded the Call of Duty previously, he wouldn't be in this situation.
Well, indeed. Playing video games at Sandringham. He's basically been given the cold shoulder by almost everyone apart from his immediate family, and the first line.
Although Williams giving them I suppose not immediate family, but in public, giving them the cold shoulder as well. I mean, Sarah Ferguson, what does she do now? Do you care?
Not really. I mean, I don't know if either of you read that book entitled by Andrew Downey.
Didn't read it. I read some of the extracts.
It's some of the stories in that book are absolutely phenomenal about the way these two people, Andrew and Fergie, behaved. The way they just, it's one thing to have wealth and power, and as long as you exercise it in the right way, that's kind of fine. But when you start treating people who don't have as much power as you as badly as they did, the way they spoke to people, the way they bullied and belittled people.
We've had examples of this on the show. Yesterday on Talk Drive, I had 2-3 people ring me, and I had someone who said that Andrew was doing drives with golf balls. He may not have meant this to happen, but there were army soldiers who they actually hit. I don't know if he actually meant to do that, but certainly that was something that people said. Maybe it's a bad golf swing, but still, I mean, you should be responsible, especially when there are people. Someone who was told, someone who rang in was told to pick up his handkerchief, and he treated them appallingly as well. This person alleged someone had been in the Grenadier Guards as well. Another person who said that, people contact me on Twitter and stuff. Loads of stories. And you remember when you meet royalty. I've been privileged to meet Prince Harry. He was lovely. I was at an event with Princess Anne as well, through my work in government and so on. And I met the King as well on one occasion, and he was lovely, and he was really nice to my mum as well, which was really important to me because she's a big royalist, and it was important she had a good day out. And actually, these encounters matter. They're 30 seconds the King will never remember because he does it all the time.
And especially because it's kind of your one job. The royal family, and I'm not anti the royal family at all, but their one job is to be sort of kind of role models, mascots, depending on how you want to put
symbols
it.
Of the nation,
figureheads, all of those things. And so, think about him going to the King going to the Vatican last week. I'm not a religious person. Is it important on one level? Not really, but on a symbolic level, yes, it is. And he did that, with dignity and grace, and he did it in completely the right way.
And to many Christians, both Catholic and Church of England or Protestant, it does mean a lot, doesn't it? It's symbolic.
It's genuinely that, frankly, and I'm going to say it, and I don't care how many people don't like it, it's the King, it's the next in line, and it's Kate. That's all we really, really care about. We care about them.
Do you care about Camilla?
Oh, no, I don't know. I'm not going to start on this debate.
Lovely Camilla.
It's just the point of that is the core. That is the core. And Andrew has got to just drift. This is going to be the hardest thing for him to do.
Yeah.
It goes against every fibre of his being. He is an egotistic, I want to say, you know, he really wants to be in the limelight. He's had that now for how many years, and this is where he is. He has got to drift away into the distance. He'll be absolutely fine. No one should pity him. He'll have a wonderful time with all the acres of land that there's going to be.
He won't have a wonderful time.
He's got to just drift. Well, do you know what? Frankly, maybe he deserves it.
Yeah,
because
I don't disagree.
the rest of us have had to go through this, seeing the royal family dragged down and down and down.
Well, it's not about the rest of us. It's about the victims. It's about the women here.
It's almost like paper cuts to the royal family and the victims, seeing this constantly go on and on and on. Okay. He has had his, you know, it's time for him to go.
Thank you both very much. We're going to continue talking about all sorts of issues that are in the news today, including Prince Andrew. What do you think about all this? 0344 499 1000 is the number to call. You can text me at 7222 with the word talk in your text. You can tweet me at talkTV, follow me at Peter Cardwell, send me a voice note, send me a WhatsApp text message on 0344 499 1000. Loads to discuss with Andy and Matthew. Lots more to come in just a minute. Stay with us.
Across the UK, on DAB+, on YouTube, on the app, on your mobile, the home of common sense. This is Talk.
Thanks to everybody who's been in touch. We're on the debate desk and we'll go back there in a minute. But in the meantime, let's read a couple of messages. Rick in Yorkshire says, when Emily Thornberry said Keir Starmer was exactly what the country wanted, that was the overstatement of the century, unless by country she meant France, Russia, Mauritius, Palestine, India, China, etc. Robert says, Peter, I must say I spluttered my coffee over the table when Thornberry said they were cold to public service. It should be self-service. Leslie says, as tragic as it is for women in Sudan, Thornberry and Cooper seem more concerned about them than our girls in the grooming gangs. Patty in Coulson says, listening to Emily Thornberry talking about the enormous debt they inherited and have made worse, Keir Starmer has continued to give millions and billions of money we don't have to other countries who are borrowing to give away that money, and it's shameful, as in an airplane, put your own mask on before helping others. Terry and Slough, what planet is Emily Thornberry on? The last thing this country needs is someone like Starmer as Prime Minister. In my opinion, he hasn't got a clue how to run the country, says Terry and Slough. Well, let's talk about a bit of a controversy this week, a new angle to it actually. Allies of Andy Burnham, there they are again, coming out of the woodwork, have accused Keir Starmer of hypocrisy over the Rachel Reeves letting scandal. This is mainstream, a source close to mainstream. The Labour grouping backed by Mr Burnham, who's of course the Greater Manchester Mayor, said the Chancellor had been treated much more leniently than Angela Rayner, despite the fact that they've been guilty of similar offences. Are they guilty of similar offences? I'm not sure they are. Not paying a lot of stamp duty and not filling in a form and paying £954. I'm not sure that's the same thing, to be honest. Reeves faces accusations of a cover-up, obviously. She initially told the Prime Minister she was unaware of the requirement. Right, we're going to have two different views on this, I strongly predict. Andy Williams.
Yeah, well, I mean, as you say, they've been treated differently because they're completely different orders of magnitude in terms of offences. Now, Rachel Reeves absolutely made a mistake. She admitted she made a mistake. She admitted she made a further mistake by then not being as transparent as she could have been in the first place with the Prime Minister. Actually, I thought the Prime Minister's letter was pretty, you know, he did sort of slap her down in public in his response.
But I think, Andy, sorry to interrupt you, and I do want your full opinion on this, but I think the question is not really for Rachel Reeves. I think her husband is the one who appears to have not kept track of what was going on.
He's a senior civil servant, by the way.
Yeah, well, you would hope that he would keep track of it. But anyway, the estate agents has actually apologised to them.
Yep.
I don't think it's that big a deal. I don't think she should resign. No. I don't think this is a resigning matter necessarily. Matthew, I know you're primed to go in a second, but just let me stick with Andy in a second for the moment. I think it's actually the Prime Minister. I think it's the Prime Minister's judgment that is the problem here, because he took her at her word, fine, rushed out a letter that late in the evening, near midnight, probably to calm the markets, fair enough, but he could have done it in the morning before the markets open at 8:30 in the morning. And then, unsurprisingly, many more questions from journalists and the public about what had actually happened. And part of politics is anticipating that. Part of comms, as you know as a communications professional, is anticipating the hostile questions that will be asked. I don't think that process was done properly, and I think that's why they're in the doo-doo on this. And the issue is more about judgment than about what they did wrong. Is that unfair?
No, I think there's something in that. I mean, there's a fellow communications professional, guy called Alex Dean, who I think appears on this station, others. He's a Tory, as it happens. He made a really good point on Twitter, which is that in a private sector organisation, if you had a member of your board who had failed to pay stamp duty in the way that Angela Rayner had, the first thing you would do as the chair of that board is write to everyone else on the board, or the cabinet in this analogy, and say, can you please make sure that you have everything in order, and if you don't, come to me and let me know what the problem is and we'll deal with the problem. And it's an example of where government should operate more like a business and deal with these things more quickly and more decisively. But do I think Rachel Reeves should resign over this? You know, absolutely not, because firstly, she's clearly not going to throw away her career as Chancellor of the Exchequer to avoid a £900 charge. I do think it's an honest mistake. And I think it's easy in opposition, and this is the problem, because they were so hardline, Labour in opposition, about the idea that anybody who made any kind of mistake should automatically...
Particularly Angela Rayner.
Yeah, I totally agree. And I think Matthew's about to do the same thing. You know, in opposition, people fall into this trap all the time where they hold people to an impossibly high standard. And actually, our politics would be much better if we were just a little bit more pragmatic about these things and said, she's made a mistake, move on. Rayner, different, didn't pay tax, had to go.
3, 2, 1, go!
It's interesting how we're suddenly now giving people the benefit of the doubt and being pragmatic about mistakes that humans make when the change of government and a different party's in charge. I mean, I just want to repeat some of the words. Being not transparent, the full picture not coming to light. If this was a Conservative, it would be absolutely everywhere. They'd be demanding resignations and probably would end up with a resignation eventually. Keir Starmer came into government saying his government and his party was going to be squeaky clean, end the 14 years of Tory chaos. Absolutely. And then we've had Louise Haigh, who had to resign for committing fraud. We've had the homelessness minister making people homeless. We had Angela Rayner's situation. I do just want to be really clear. What Rachel Reeves did was breaking the law. She had to get one of these licences, and I know that the estate agents held their hands up and said, we made the mistake, the person who was supposed to do it quit and we forgot to pick it up on the Monday. But that doesn't excuse responsibility. Legally, it is still the homeowner's responsibility.
But show me someone who hasn't broken the law inadvertently in some way. Like they've,
but that's not the point. They're not the Chancellor of the Exchequer.
You get a parking ticket, or
they're not the Chancellor of the Exchequer. They're not the Prime Minister. And I do agree. I actually do agree with what you said about. I think it goes to the Prime Minister, and you said this, Peter, as well. It goes to the PM's judgment, and this is the problem. He set the tone over a year ago that this government was going to be clean. It was going to be no more sleaze and scandal. And then all we've seen is the freebies, the donations, the tickets, the suits being bought for you. All of these things. It is just drip-fed after drip-fed after drip-fed, and frankly, that's why people are so fed up. And if it wasn't a big issue, why are Labour so far down in the polls? If it wasn't a big issue, why are the public so fed up?
Well, there are lots of reasons.
Right? It is a big issue,
but that's a fair point in the sense that the Rachel Reeves and her husband Nick Joycey, who is a senior civil servant, they have broken the law here, inadvertently or not. And listen, you know, I've had the odd parking ticket in my time, and speeding fine as well, it must be said. But the point is that, I mean, a lot of people will say, well, maybe not get all the detail of this scandal, but it's another thing, isn't it? It's another aspect of how people feel that politicians are out of touch with them. If I was renting my house out, I'm not in a position because I don't have two homes, I have one home. If there was a £954 charge, I would notice that big time, that there was a £954 charge. And if I hadn't been charged that, I would immediately say, hold on a second, has everything been done right here? You talked about the £954 charge, you haven't charged me that. But they didn't seem to notice.
Look, I think it's negligent. I think I agree that if you're the Chancellor of the Exchequer or any cabinet minister or anyone actually who's elected, you have to be held to a higher standard. So, you know, I think it's really unfortunate, and I think it's the latest in a series of very unfortunate things that various Labour politicians have done. And I don't, you know, there's no point going back into the sort of. There's some false equivalence going on here with things like, oh well, you know, Rishi Sunak got fined for presenting a cake or whatever the situation was. That was different because that was a microcosm of a bigger issue, which was industrial scale breaking of the lockdown rules by the people who set the rules, which is a completely different thing. And you know, ultimately, I'm glad that those people were held to account for that. But all I'm saying is, I think our politics would be much better if we could. You know, I have no doubt there'll be people who are absolutely furious about this at home. But the reality is, they will have done similar things in their lives, and they won't have been held to the same standard because they're not the Chancellor.
I think there are very, very few people in this country who tweeted a week before about these selective licences, who then forgot to get a selective licence for their home, who then are now going to have to pay £38,000 back in rent to the tenants who are eligible to claim for that money back. And at the end of the day, there are very few people in this country who are the Chancellor of the Exchequer. Standards were set very, very high by the Labour government. Rachel Reeves hasn't met those, and she is still responsible. The landlord is responsible, regardless of who your estate agent is. This story isn't over.
Part of the reason I stopped drinking 7 years ago is because I did and said stupid things, and I wanted to stop doing and saying stupid things. It was one of the best decisions I ever made. One of the things I did was stealing a toilet roll from the United Nations in New York. I'm not sure I set back the cause of international diplomacy too far, but I'd like to apologise publicly.
Will you resign, Minister? Will you resign?
To Antonio Guterres for that. Stay with us here on Talk, lots to discuss.
Big news coming this December. Our talkTV app is moving to the Talk app. You can watch, catch up and listen to all your favourite shows and podcasts anytime, anywhere, all on the Talk app. From Monday, 1st of December, the talkTV app will no longer exist, so don't miss out. So head over to your App Store or Google Play and search Talk now.
Across the UK, on DAB+, on YouTube, on the app, on your mobile, the home of common sense. This is Talk.
Thank you to Mick, who has been in touch to say how patronising is Andy Williams to dismiss, he's folded his arms, to dismiss Reeves' law breaking. She is Chancellor of the Exchequer and has been cavalier and reckless, not for the first time, overspending on credit cards, lies on their CV and accepting freebies. What is sacking behaviour, Mick? Andy?
Do you know what, Mick? Show me your squeaky clean, perfect pass.
Yeah,
You've never done anything. You've never done anything. Well, no, you've never done anything wrong in your life. You've never ever inadvertently broken the law. Come on.
Mick, have you ever overspent on your credit card, lied on your CV, rented out your second house and forgot to get a licence,
well,
and have been the Chancellor of the Exchequer? I thought not.
The proportionate...
The hypocrisy.
Actually,
the hypocrisy.
It's not...
It is. You're holding ministers to lower standards.
Actually, the proportion of people who lie on their CV is extremely high. I'm not excusing it, but it's absolutely the case that almost everyone lies on their CV.
I want to talk about Zara Sultana, another politician who is, of course, the co-leader of your party. This is the party that Jeremy Corbyn co-leads with her, although how much leadership has actually been shown, I think, is a question we can ask. She spoke to Nick Robinson on the BBC on his podcast Political Thinking. This is what she said about Nigel Farage.
I do think he has all the features of a fascist politician, and I think it's important that we stop a fascist reform government.
Fascist?
When someone attacks trade union rights, when they are not supportive of minority communities, where they are trying to get us out of the ECHR so they can get away with anything and there is no state accountability, we can see what's happening across Europe, and that is a descent into fascism.
You're comparing Nigel Farage with Franco, with Mussolini, arguably with Adolf Hitler. Really?
I have legitimate concerns about what a Nigel Farage government would do to trade unionists, to working class communities, to minority communities, to LGBT people. And what I've seen in government is Nigel Farage and his colleagues, like I said, vote against trade union rights, vote against anything that would actually help our working class communities. So yes, he's a danger.
Nigel Farage clearly hates LGBT people so much that he made the openly gay politician, and indeed former presenter in this station, David Bull, chairman of his party. One of his most prominent councillors is Darren Grimes, who's openly gay. Yeah, clearly Nigel Farage hates gay people. Is he a fascist, Andy?
No. No. I mean, none of the features of Farage that Zara Sultana listed there make you a fascist, obviously.
Why is she saying it?
Because she is a student politician. She's not serious. She's absolutely typical of the hard left, who just call people names and don't actually have a really serious idea about how they would do things differently. And they constantly think they're occupying the moral high ground, when actually, in different ways, they're just as bad as all of these people. And by the way, you know, I think Nigel Farage is a force for bad. I think he is a malign influence on this country and has been for over a decade. I think he's divisive. He has said politics is about taking sides and sales, and sometimes
it is about taking sides.
It is about taking sides, and he's also said it's about sales, and I agree with that. And he said, and sometimes you have to sell fear. And I think Nigel Farage has been extremely effective at selling fear, but none of those things make him a fascist.
When did he say that?
He has said that.
Okay.
That is a quote.
All
That
right.
is a quote.
Okay.
That is a quote. I actually didn't know about that until I read it in Fraser Nelson's column the other week. But he's not a racist and he's not a fascist.
I agreed with everything Andy said, which is very rare until Andy went on about Nigel Farage. Zara Salty Sultana is exactly that. It is clickbait, it is left-wing populism, it is hard left, moral high ground, the superiority complex. Let's not forget, she's apparently co-leading this party called Your Party that doesn't really have a name, that doesn't have members, it has subscribers to a newsletter, that then she launched the membership drive without Jeremy Corbyn's
lost
permission.
track of all of
then
this stuff.
Now apparently Jeremy Corbyn is taking the company that was getting the donations money to court. There is all this stuff going on. For her to lecture anybody about what a politician is or should be, I think is very rich. I do not think people should pay attention, frankly, to what she says. She should focus more on representing her constituents than everyone else, it seems, in the world.
It's People's Front of Judea versus the Judeans People's Front kind of stuff, although they would call it, of course, the West Bank. Danielle is in Dusseldorf in Germany. Has given us a ring all the way from there. Danielle, thanks for the call. I think it's the Royals you want to talk about. You're on with me, but also Andy and Matthew. What would you like to say?
Well, I'm watching the royal saga, which is developing very dramatically in the last weeks. And my question is, Prince Harry and Meghan, they are doing a lot of damage to the reputation of the royal family, because everything they're doing, something scandalous in the US, it reflects negatively also on the reputation of the monarchy, because they are somehow connected. And I wanted to ask, what can the public or the media do, perhaps to put more pressure on King Charles to take the titles away from the two Sussexes? Because we cannot wait until William will be king. It is said in the media, well, when William will be king, he will make a clean house. That takes too long. There will be too much damage be done until then.
Thank you, Danielle, for that question. Really appreciate that. That's Danielle in Dusseldorf in Germany. There is this, now that Prince Andrew has had, or Andrew Mountbatten Windsor, as we now should call him, but I'm still struggling with King Charles. I still say Prince Charles sometimes when not thinking. And David Lammy, actually, in the House of Commons the other day, talking about Her Majesty's prisons. Should Harry and Meghan have their titles stripped from them, Andy?
No, I don't think so. I mean, I don't think it matters. I just don't think it matters either way. I don't think it's fair to draw an equivalence between Prince Harry's behaviour and Andrew's behaviour. I mean, they're just totally... You have one person who's been accused of the things he's been accused of and whatever, and another person who you may or may not think has behaved badly and disgraced his family and etc, etc. But we talked about Andrew going off to live in sort of irrelevance at Sandringham, and I think we should let Harry go off and live in irrelevance in LA.
But the problem is that Harry and Meghan decided they wanted to leave the royal family, leave everything in the UK and go over to Canada and then America. Is the point of, OK, leave the titles on your way out. That's the frustration. Go and be Harry and Meghan. Go do all your Netflix things. They say they wanted to escape the media and then went and signed all these deals. It's just, again, it's another level of hypocrisy. If you don't want the attention, hand your prince back, hand your Duke and Duchess back, and just go be Harry and Meghan. You're going to get all these deals anyway. No one cares whether you're Prince Harry or just Harry. People don't walk up to you in the street, say, oh, hello, Prince, how are you? They say, hello, Harry, how are you? You know, just hand them back. If they want to... so I completely agree. What we need to do is we need to see Harry and Meghan mature a bit and go, yeah, we want a private life with our kids to grow up our family. We don't need the Prince, Princess, Duke and Duchess.
Toby Young, now Lord Young, his father was a member of the House of Lords as well, and he could style himself in the title of the Honourable Toby Young. And when he went to New York to work for Vanity Fair, he got on his business cards and his credit cards and all the rest with HON Toby Young, and American.
Smart.
Americans used to say, "Hey, hon."
Hey, hon.
Hey, hon. Hon, will you come through? Danielle, thanks for your call. I really appreciate that. Thanks to everybody else who's been in touch as well. John says, inflammatory political rhetoric, including labelling opponents as fascists or Nazis, has led to an increase in political polarisation and real-world violence. The language used by political leaders and groups is widely considered to matter significantly in shaping public perception and behaviour. Thank you to Mark in Stratford. He says, if anyone didn't think Zara Sultana was a complete clown by now, they would need to have a word with themselves. She should try reading some history books instead of Socialist Worker for Dummies and grow up. What a child, have a good one, says Mark in Stratford. She also says that if you point out that Sultana, which is her surname, is the same as, you know, basically a raisin, that's racist, apparently.
Wow.
Thank you to Mega Vegan, who says, if this had been an error from a Tory politician, your expert would have the exact opposite views about it. Well, Matthew Goodwin Freeman is quite literally a Conservative councillor. Ian Brown says, Rachel Reeves, Bank of England economist, chess champion, landlord. Yes. And Andy in Thatcham says, I know of a number of landlords who have failed to get licences to rent their properties out. They've been fined 5 figures of over £30,000 and been put on the database. Will they now get their cases reviewed, as it seems it's being made out to be an inconsequential crime? Well, I do wonder what Rachel Reeves will actually have to do. Will she be fined? She's presumably now applied for one of these licences, or is it a scandal you just don't care about? Should we just talk about other things? Well, we are going to talk about many topics today, including Andrew. Rupert Bell is with us in just a few minutes after the news. I want to say a huge thank you to Matthew Goodwin Freeman, the political commentator and Conservative councillor, and Andy Williams as well, political commentator. And get your calls in over the break, 0344 499 1000. Stay with us here on Talk.
Across the UK, on DAB+, on YouTube, on the app, on your mobile, the home of common sense. This is Talk.
Well, a very good morning, and thank you so much to everybody who has been in touch. We'll get to more of your calls in just a minute. This is Talk, and I'm Peter Cardwell here between now and 1 o'clock. We're going to talk about Andrew in a second. Unrivaled royal coverage here on Talk. Loads of people getting in touch, and of course we will hear from Rupert Bell, our royal correspondent, on his view on all of this. Let me know your thoughts. Has Andrew done enough? Surely now he should say, you know, all my titles have been taken away, and actually the time has come to talk to the American authorities and the British authorities about everything he knows. We'll talk as well this hour about other topics as well. We'll talk about foreign prisoners, the latest migration lines as well, always stuff happening there in Sudan and Nigeria as well, the forgotten conflicts of the world. I will talk about that, talk to Emily Thornberry about that a little bit earlier on. Loads to discuss on Zara Sultana as well. Lots of people very annoyed that she has called Nigel Farage a fascist. What do you think about that? 0344 499 1000. You can text me 87222 with the word talk in your text. You can tweet me at talkTV. Follow me at Peter Cardwell. You can send me a voice note. We'll come to a few of those in just a second, actually. 0344 499 1000. That's the number as well for WhatsApp text messages. You can also give me a ring on that number, and we'll take more calls as the show goes on here right through until 1 o'clock today, and indeed tomorrow. Plenty to discuss here on Talk. Kitty has been in touch on Rachel Reeves. This is what Kitty has said on a voice note.
Hi Peter, Kitty from Kent here. On the Rachel Reeves matter, I'm afraid that she has broken the law and she has lied about it. I do not for 1 second believe I didn't know about it. And then you get the first set of excuses to Starmer, and then the second, oh sorry, there was an email we missed out. It wouldn't work for you and it wouldn't work for me. We would be held to account for breaking the law. So it doesn't matter whether we agree that that law and the bureaucracy should be there in the first place. It is about, it was there, she broke the law. If not, is this a precedent that any of us can break any law and then say, oh, I didn't realise that was the law, and get let off? I don't think so. So she needs to be held to account. She's lied on her CV. This is just one in a string of muck-ups that she's done that are deliberate. She needs to go.
Kitty, really interesting thoughts there. And yes, I mean, I think a lot of people will agree with a lot of the things that you've said there. I suppose one of the points that Bernie wants to make in another voice note is about leniency and whether we should show that or not show that. And as you say, Kitty, you know, any first-year law student will tell you ignorance is no defence. So when the Chancellor says, actually, I didn't know about it, actually my husband was dealing with it, well, is that actually a proper excuse? What do you think of what Kitty said? 0344 499 1000. Let's get another perspective now from Bernie.
This is Bernie from Surrey. The problem with this is that the leniency shown in terms of forgiveness for a mistake seems only to be shown to people in government, to ministers. And this is true across both parties. When these laws are so tight and people can make honest mistakes, should we therefore not take that as an example for everybody? And should the law not be a little bit more leniently applied when someone makes an honest mistake, as Reeves apparently has, rather than hammering down on everybody? And we see this again and again in other areas too, not least on the relevance of the difference between the scales of punishment meted out for tweets as opposed to real harms, real physical harms that are done. I think there's a disparity there. There's something that needs to be looked at.
Bernie, some good points in there. Just a very friendly thing to say. Can you please, not that I ever want you to not listen to me, but can you please switch off your radio or TV just when you're recording those voice messages? Just we have quite a number of people who listen to the programme who might have some mild hearing problems, and we just want it to be as clear as possible, and that is a friendly thing. I'm not admonishing you by any stretch of the imagination. And Bernie, please do send in your voice notes again. Great to hear from you, and great perspective there as well. Someone who's always clear as a bell, is Rupert Bell, Talk's royal correspondent. Rupert, what do you make of the latest revelations on Andrew? This is all over the papers today. What should he do now? Tell me your perspective on this.
Well, I think he somehow needs to keep a very low profile, but I think the pressure is increasing on him. That is the problem with all the revelations that have come out around his relationship and the timeline of his relationship with Jeffrey Epstein that has led to this, and the exasperation within royal circles. So for Andrew, it is a very difficult time. Can he you know, obviously the calls from Virginia Giuffre's brother and sister-in-law to come out, come clean, and we've seen the support of the in the statement from the King and Queen about the fact that they spare a thought for all the people who are victims of abuse. And bearing in mind the Queen has made a passionate part of her role is helping women who suffer abuse and awful sorts of actions against them. So the Queen has had a high-profile role in that, and she felt at times that this whole thing with Andrew was affecting her work in this issue. So that was one of the many reasons. There's a big sort of pressure point, all sorts of people saying that it was Sarah's decision to not stay with him anymore, the final sort of decision, but it was the pieces of the jigsaw coming together to finally make Andrew realise that he had nowhere else to go, but it would seem a cottage in Sandringham.
Speaking of having nowhere else to go, what happens to Sarah Ferguson now?
Well, they say that she will find accommodation, I suppose, just like any other
like a real person, Rupert.
Like a real person. Go and find a house to live, you know. That, I think, is what, you know, there she has been holed up in the Royal Lodge, the 30-room house that Andrew has had since 2003. So now, as a divorced woman, she now has to go and fend for herself and sort out her own accommodation. Her career is clearly now very much on hold because of her letters and emails to Jeffrey Epstein. So she's got her own problems to deal with. So for both of them, this is a huge fall from grace. And for the royal family, they will hope it goes away, but I'm not sure it will, because I'm pretty sure there may be further revelations to come out that could put further pressure on Andrew and put the royal family in the spotlight again for all the wrong reasons.
How surprised were you about what happened on Thursday? This seemed to take a lot of royal, not a criticism, Rupert, but it seemed to take a lot of royal commentators and experts by surprise. The fact it happened, then, and the fact that it was so final.
Well, I'm not going to pretend that I wasn't surprised as well when it came through, because you have to say the loyalty of the king that he'd shown to his brother, you thought that blood might be thicker than water, but suddenly I think he began to realise, and maybe that sort of weekly discussions that he has with Keir Starmer, maybe a bit of what's going on in Parliament, preventing any sort of going to the discussing the Andrew situation in the House of Commons may have been seen as a step too far for the king, and thought, right, I've got to nip this one now and take control of it, because it has been a drip ever since the Emily Maitlis interview of problems for him. And the royal family may have been accused of just being out of step with public opinion when it came to Andrew. And just as they occasionally have been throughout the history, you think when Diana died, there was a lot, public opinion seemed to suggest that the Queen didn't handle that well, although she was doing it for all the right reasons, protecting Diana's children. And that's why she stayed there and kept a low profile. But this, I think, is a very different feel. And it's almost, you have to go back to 1917 for something like this to happen. This is really unprecedented. So I, like many, and I'm going to be, I have to admit it, I did not see this coming, and I didn't see it coming in such a brutal fashion.
Because, of course, Charles has been criticised for not being strong enough on his brother. The Queen had him as her favourite son, of course, and perhaps protected him in some way, or was instructing people to protect him. We don't know exactly what happened then. I'm sure that will all come out in the fullness of time. I wonder what you make of some of the reporting around William's views on this and the influence he may have had on his father, maybe not this week necessarily, but certainly in previous weeks and months, urging stronger action on Andrew.
Yes, because I think William probably is saying this is not a good look, and he's, going to be king one day, and he doesn't want, the sort of, with the polls and everything, sort of the royal family being seen in a negative light. wanted to basically get rid of the Andrew problem, and him being in Windsor, bearing in mind that William has just moved into his forever home, Forest Lodge, over this last couple of weeks, I believe. He just wants him away from Windsor, and all the financial sort of question marks over how the royal family do business. And that is something that William is going to have to sort out, a much more open look, and that there isn't anything that's under sort of cover of darkness, or there's some deals that we don't quite understand what was going on, peppercorn rents here and all that, which was around Andrew, although he did put $8.5 million into get securing the lease and the refurbishing Royal Lodge. So that was one of the stumbling blocks, is how they sorted out the financial severance of that lease. But for William, I'm pretty sure that he wants the Andrew problem to go away. You saw how the body language at the Duchess of Kent's funeral. He's not someone who looked like he enjoyed being around the company of his uncle.
Rupert, as always, thank you. That's Rupert Bell, Talks Royal correspondent. Mark's on the phone from Glasgow. 0344 499 1000 is the number Mark's rung. Mark, thanks for your call today. What would you like to talk about?
Well, I think it's Mandelson, in truth. Andrew has suddenly this tale has taken another pair of legs.
Yeah.
But I think that the Andrew story has gone hot, as has the story about the digital identity cards. And funnily enough, it all kind of coincided with two things that happened within the government and Mandelson. One was the photograph of Mandelson sitting in a very short dressing gown, sharing a drink with Epstein, old buddies. Funny how that's not, no one's asked him to remove his title.
Well, I asked Emily Thornby this morning whether it should happen, but it seems to have gone quiet, certainly from Downing Street's perspective. Well, they don't seem to be moving in that direction at all with Peter Mandelson, although he has been removed as our ambassador to Washington.
Well, we know that. But the other one is digital ID. Both of these huge stories, Andrew and digital ID, jumped out of the woodwork and got another set of legs, another set of wind, to cover two other stories that were going on. One was Mandelson and Epstein. But they really want that to go away, because there's clearly dirt there. And the other one was the donation of $740,000 by Morgan McSweeney, made from his own company, the company he's the director of, to Starmer's election campaign, undeclared money. So these two stories have now got buried underneath digital ID and so on. And I'm afraid Lord Mandelson has form for doing this kind of thing. Blow up small stories. Do
you think Peter Mandelson's behind the blowing up of those stories? You think Peter Mandelson is blowing? Hold on a second. Is blowing up a story and trying to take the focus away from Morgan McSweeney, his protege? Do you really think that's the unseen hand of Peter Mandelson's behind the news management of the media in this country?
Well, he certainly controlled the BBC when he was there, and speaking to people who used to work with him, by God, they called him the Prince of Darkness.
He is an arch media manipulator, but I'm not sure you can get people to stop talking about things simply by giving them bigger stories. I mean, the media talk about all sorts of things.
You can, but if you think back to the time when Mandelson was caught on the Russian oligarch's super yacht, the aluminium oligarch super yacht, when he was an EU commissioner some 20 plus years ago, he got caught in a lie. I've only been on there once. Then it was someone else said, no, I've seen you on there a few times. And then suddenly the huge story about the radio presenter and so on that went on daily for 4 months and got no complaints on the night. It was Jonathan Ross and somebody else. And it absolutely smoke-screened and buried, and it went on long enough to get rid of the story about Mandelson. The news just kept going and going and going till the Mandelson.
Well, I think there is manipulation of the news to some degree, attempted anyway by politicians and their spin doctors. That is something that is attempted, certainly. It doesn't always succeed, though, and I think you might be giving Peter Mandelson a bit too much credit, Mark, because when there are big stories, the media will talk about them.
Well, hang on a minute. Peter Mandelson is the arch buddy of Tony Blair. He got Tony Blair elected and managed him and so on. So the Tony Blair Institute for Globalization has fingers in many, many pies. And I'm pretty confident that between Mandelson, Blair, and of course Starmer, who Blair pulls the strings of, one suspects, are very much leaning on where they need to lean and going with stories and doing distraction techniques, a good old PR, public relations thing. You put a distraction story out. Come on, where did the electronic, the digital identity come from? It wasn't in anyone's election.
You honestly think they did that as sort of dead cat strategy to distract from other things?
Absolutely.
Okay, all right.
It came out of nowhere.
Well,
and
Mark,
just at that moment.
Just because you're cynical doesn't necessarily mean you're wrong. But thank you, Mark, for your thoughts this morning. Thanks to everybody else who's been in touch as well. Sean in Gloucester says, every day this disastrous Labour party of crooks do something worse. The Tories weren't very good, but much better than this totally incompetent Labour, Sean calls them. But between them, they have systematically ruined this country following Blair's lead. I genuinely fear we're past the point of no return. Our only hope is a fresh approach with Reform UK, and even if they only achieve 10% of what they say they will, we will be infinitely better off. I'm patriotic, but I would really leave given the chance, says Sean in Gloucester and in North Devon. All things considered, I think Charles and Camilla should step down to make way for William and Catherine. They have the energy and drive to do a fantastic job representing our country and honouring our late Queen Elizabeth. That's Anne in North Devon. Well, what do you think about all these stories? Plenty to talk about this morning. 0344 499 1000. We'll take more of your calls, texts, tweets and voice notes next. I also want to talk about two stories that I believe are a bit forgotten: Sudan and Nigeria. We'll talk about that after the break.
Big news coming this December. Our talkTV app is moving to the Talk app. You can watch, catch up and listen to all your favourite shows and podcasts anytime, anywhere, all on the Talk app. From Monday, 1st of December, the talkTV app will no longer exist, so don't miss out. So head over to your App Store or Google Play and search Talk now.
Across the UK, on DAB+, on YouTube, on the app, on your mobile. the home of common sense. This is Talk.
I want to thank everybody who's contacted me this week saying that we're missing a big story. We're missing two big stories, actually. One is about Nigeria, one is about Sudan. These are two huge global stories. And let me tell you something. The mainstream media often won't tell you about these things, but we will. I'm going to talk about them right now. We hear so much about the alleged genocide in Gaza. It is factually not a genocide. So I want to tell you about another conflict where there actually is a genocide, one for which there are no marches on the streets of London every second Saturday, no appeals from politicians in Parliament, indeed very little actually reported about, because it's not a conflict that involves the Israelis, and it's not a conflict where people with access to grind can simply blame the Jews. This is a conflict where, once again, Islamists are carrying out the slaughter. Maybe that's why politicians and the media are reluctant to talk about it. If they tolerate radical Islamists marching in our streets and calling for a jihad and the destruction of Israel, then they'll certainly tolerate a genocide targeting Christians thousands of miles away. The civil war in Sudan has seen 150,000 people killed. 12 million people have been displaced. The UN calls it the world's largest humanitarian crisis. How much have you heard about this? How often have you seen reports in the mainstream media about this? How many times have virtue-signalling politicians like Jeremy Corbyn and Zara Sultana condemned it and spoken out in Parliament about it? In fairness, Emily Thornberry did talk about it earlier on in the programme when I asked her about it. The genocide in Sudan is a conflict between the military and the paramilitary Rapid Support Services, RSF. It's been called a continuation of the Darfur genocide by some aid agencies. The RSF emerged from the Janjaweed militia, which massacred hundreds of thousands of Darfuris from non-Arab politicians in the early 2000s. This includes Christians, of course. Well, now they're back. Since April 2023, the RSF has been fighting the Sudanese military in this brutal civil war. Truly gruesome videos have been shared online with summary killings, celebrations over dead bodies, widespread abuse of unarmed people, including widespread rape of women and girls. So far, so Hamas. Aid agencies are struggling to find shelter, food and medical treatment for desperate adults and children, with many suffering from malnutrition. Researchers from Yale University point to evidence of a systematic and intentional process of ethnic cleansing of indigenous non-Arab communities, including Christians. The world needs to wake up to what's going on in Sudan. I also want to talk briefly about the Nigerian crisis, where Christians are also being targeted and murdered. President Trump yesterday said Christianity is facing an existential threat in Nigeria and has blamed radical Islamists who are responsible for this mass slaughter. That's what President Trump says. He thinks it's important. Trump has named Nigeria as a country of particular concern, which means it's one he thinks is engaged in severe violations of religious freedoms. So what exactly is happening to Christians in Nigeria? Well, the northeast of the country has faced Boko Haram jihadist violence for over a decade and a half. You may remember the hashtag Bring Back Our Girls campaign. Not so much of that now from Michelle Obama and her ilk. More than 40,000 people have died and 2 million people have been displaced. Land, resources such as water and religion are interwoven into the conflict in Nigeria. Christians are being wiped out. One NGO leader recently told Newsweek magazine, if nothing is done in the next few years, Christianity will cease to exist in Nigeria. Open Doors, which is an international Christian advocacy group, says more Christians are killed for their faith in Nigeria than the rest of the world combined. It's about time we started talking about Sudan and Nigeria. I'm doing that right now in this show, and you can trust me and you can trust Talk to tell the stories the rest of the media will not. The truth matters, no matter how inconvenient that may be to some. We've got to talk about Nigeria, we've got to talk about Sudan. Wouldn't it be nice if Keir Starmer took action in those conflicts, as well as his virtue signalling on the Middle East? If you want to talk about either of these conflicts, the lines are open, and they will be right through until 1 o'clock. I know this is a bit different to what we usually talk. We usually talk about domestic issues, and it's absolutely right that we do that. I get that. And you want to talk about all those issues. I've got calls on the line that I'm going to take in a second, and Rachel Reeves and, of course, Andrew as well are the two big stories today. But these are important stories too. If you want to talk about them, it's 0344 499 1000. Tarquin's on the line and wants to talk about Rachel Reeves. Tarquin, you're very welcome to the programme. Tell us what you'd like to say about Rachel Reeves.
Good morning, Peter. As Edward Bernays, the renowned author of propaganda, said, perception is reality. Now, the perception is amongst the British people that the political career politicians are now effectively above the law. They have their own version of law, which they, and I to quote Starmer himself in his response to the ethics decision, was that she inadvertently, quote unquote, etc. Well, now does that set precedent in English common law that we can all say, "Oh, Mr. Taxman, I inadvertently forgot to submit"?
Well, it's a very good point, and ignorance is no defence.
Yes.
So what should happen to Rachel Reeves? I mean, she's likely to be fined for this. She's likely to have to pay her tenants back some of the money. She's got a lot of political heat about this. But should there be more that happens? Do you think? The independent ethics advisor says essentially nothing to see here. We've got all the information. We've got all the emails. Should anything more happen now, Tarquin?
Of course it should, but of course it won't do because she's got.
What should happen?
They're hold under the waterline, but because she's got a budget to deliver, he's not going to mess that up with the PR optics of sacking her, even though he should do. If he had any moral compass at all, that man, that former so-called to public prosecute, supposedly one of the highest people beyond reproach, but clearly it's just that when it suits them. When it suits them, Peter, do you know what I mean? But not us. Oh no, we still have to stick to the rigid minutiae of the law in all of its stupid regulatory details. But that is a criminal offence. And she's got away with it.
Tarquin, thanks for your thoughts. That's Tarquin in London. Lee's in Hampstead, another part of London. Lee, tell me what you think about all this.
Peter, great to talk to you.
You too, Lee.
Thank you. A potential woe and I think a unique take on the Reeves matter, which I've been following very carefully over the last few days, and I've not heard this mentioned. Perhaps you could confirm that. Basically, if Reeves and her husband have been so lax in obtaining a license to let, I question whether, and I'm assuming here, that they probably had a mortgage on the property when they were living
that's an
there
aspect
together.
too, definitely. And if your mortgage
and did they then get onto their mortgage company and said, "Hey, we're leaving, we're subletting, we need a buy-to-let mortgage," which, Peter, is considerably more expensive
yes, it is.
than a standard residential mortgage.
I mean, the estate agency, as we know, has apologised to them. It said it made a mistake. I mean, we don't know the answer in regard to a buy-to-let mortgage, certainly, and there are ways.
With respect, that's got nothing to do with the estate agent.
No, agreed.
Between the Reeves.
Yeah. No, and there is a question about whether they have bent the rules in that regard. Yeah.
And by not switching from a residential mortgage to a buy-to-let mortgage, that is fraud.
Well, do you know what I'm going to do? I don't know the answer.
It up, sir.
Okay. I don't know the answer to that, Lee. But part of journalism is obviously finding stuff out. So what I'm going to ask the top team behind the glass to do, and Chris, the producer, is to give Rachel Reeves' people a call and see if she's got a buy-to-let mortgage, if that's all right. And if they give us an answer by the end of the show, whether she has moved from a normal, straightforward mortgage, residential mortgage, to a buy-to-let mortgage, we will give you the answer. Is that okay, Lee?
May I just also very quickly just make one quick comment about Nigeria?
Go ahead.
I'm waiting to see when the first march will take place in Marble Arch to defend what's going on in Nigeria.
I think you might be waiting a long time, Lee. Well, it's hypocrisy writ large. Listen, thank you, Lee. I really appreciate that. Many people getting in touch about Rachel Reeves, about Emily Thornberry. Let me read out a couple of the ones about Emily Thornberry, actually, and then we'll take a voice note from Paul, actually, on Emily Thornberry in just a second. Colin in Warwick says, Thornberry, this is Emily Thornberry, spoke to me a little bit earlier on the programme. She's a typical Labour liar, says Colin, going on about America doing nothing about a scumbag over there, but her disgusting party covering up thousands of Pakistani rapists. What a hypocritical fool, I think Colin means. Chris says, so Thornberry says it's fine for Andy Windsor to lose all his titles and stylings, but Peter Mann says it's okay to remain a lord, both in association with Epstein, but I guess only one of them supports Labour. Sean says, typical lefty, Emily Thornberry criticised the Tories, but dismissed any and all criticism of this treacherous Labour party. No credibility whatsoever, and a shining example of why we're in such a mess. Hardly a resounding endorsement of Starmer by the pantomime dame, says Graham. No doubt Thornberry is still miffed that she wasn't given a cabinet position, says Graham in Bushy. Yeah, I should have asked her, actually, what she thinks of the performance of Lord Hermer, Chris, who is the Attorney General and was given the job in preference to her. Chris in Southampton says, what Emily Thornberry discussed there was complete guff, saying how broken in debt this country is. Then she says about sending loads of money to other countries like Africa. Well, Africa's a continent, not a country. What she said about women being abused there is also the same as what is happening happening to women in the UK. Surely it's not on the same scale as Africa, but let's sort out our own country first. She's completely out of touch. Starmer has been pulled as the most unpopular PM, says Chris. Another person says the level of Thornbury's delusional view of the Labour Party is off the chart. And one more before we go to Paul's voice note as promised. Kev Mears from Shropshire says, "Oh, Peter, I can't listen to Emily Thornberry regarding the abuse of girls overseas. It's terrible, but the Labour Party's attitude towards what a woman is to start with, and the thousands of cases in London of gang rape and groomings the Labour mayor denies, and the grooming gang rapes, certainly in Labour-run towns like mine in Telford, ... I mean, there's so much. Kev, I know exactly what you mean. In all of that, it does stick in the craw to some degree. I do think it's a good thing that this inquiry is going ahead, but it's being very, very slow. I also think it's a good thing that Yvette Cooper is speaking up about this, as is Emily Thornberry in regard to Nigeria and Sudan. Let's hear from Paul.
Hi, it's Paul I live in Murcia in Spain. Who on earth is this woman? People expect politicians to be humans that make mistakes. No, we expect them to be honest, act with morality, have morals. And we took over the worst economy. What the hell are they doing now with the economy? It's terrible. She's taken an economy that had gone through COVID, Brexit, and was recovering, actually. And she's saying that Rachel's blaming the fact that what she took over is the reason why it's in such a bad condition now. Far from it. Far from it. Ridiculous woman.
Thank you very much indeed, Paul, for that. Emily Thornberry came on the programme. She fronted it up. She gave a good interview. I mean, she well, maybe not a good interview in your opinion, but she certainly came on, which a lot of Labour politicians don't. Nicola in Norfolk says, "Sorry, Peter, but how Emily Thornberry can say Starmer is what the people want and what you see is what you get, and there are no sides to him, is laughable and deluded. He has so many sides. He's a dodecahedron," can almost say that word, Nicola, and trying to placate everyone placates no one. Zara Sultana's comments about Farage, Nicola also talks about, typical of the left, who bandy around the words Nazi, fascist and racist to describe anyone they disagree with. By using them so readily and indiscriminately, they're diminishing their meaning and don't seem to actually understand their definition. Lots more to talk about, including why 1 in 8 prisoners are now foreign nationals, and an asylum seeker sexually assaulting and strangling a woman under a bridge after following her out of a nightclub. This just misery, these horrendous stories about what some asylum seekers, not all of them, but some of them are up to, just continue. Court cases every day. Lots to discuss here on Talk. Stay with us.
across the UK, on DAB+, on YouTube, on the app, on your mobile, the home of common sense. This is Talk.
More on Emily Thornberry. Lots of people getting in touch about how the interview I did with her a bit earlier on. She says, Emily Thornberry, Ian in Gosport's been in touch saying, Emily Thornberry, delusional, out of touch, and a prime example of another untrustworthy politician. Well, I'm sure Emily Thornberry would say that she's very trustworthy. Sorry for the rant, but I can't stand her, says Ian. That's okay. That's all right. This is the home of free speech, and if you want to talk about it, we'll talk about it. It's the home of common sense as well. Leslie says, Thornberry, OMG, is she for real? Tone deaf, condescending, and deluded. And another person says, great start to the show a bit earlier on, very refreshing to have reasoned discussion. Even though I've never rated Dame Emily, it made great viewing. I hope this can be the start of a new direction, steering the channel away from so much shouting against something you disagree with. There will be shouting. There has been shouting, and there will continue to be shouting. Let me tell you, because sometimes I get angry about things. I can't speak for other presenters. It's up to them how they do their own shows, just as it's up to me how I do my show sometimes. So we will certainly make sure that all views are represented. Jane says, so Boris Johnson was responsible for everything in Downing Street, but Keir Starmer isn't. He's too busy being on top of everything going on. And one more about Emily Thornberry. Gavin Cornwall says, what a joke Thornberry is. What has she ever achieved? She's such a cushy number, rewarded for complete failure. The sooner we vote people like this out, the better. Good riddance. Well, and actually, just before we go to Robert Bates, who's standing by, he's the research director at the Centre for Migration Control. There are loads of migration stories I want to talk about today. Thank you to Ian. And Ian is actually, his full title is Uncle Ian, because he's Jack's Uncle Ian, and he knows about property and finance and stuff. And he has messaged me, so thank you, Uncle Ian, for doing that. You don't necessarily need a buy-to-let mortgage, Rachel Reeves, but must inform the lender and ask permission to let, and also change the house insurance. The lender can refuse and require a change. So thank you, Uncle Ian. Not only have you looked after Jack on many an occasion, keeping him alive and well, and indeed been a victim of his claws. Uncle Ian helped me get him into the box for the vet on a few occasions, but an expert on all those issues as well. I'll speak to another expert, Robert Bates, the research director for the Centre for Migration Control, because Robert, horrific story about an asylum seeker who sexually assaulted and strangled a woman under a bridge after following her out of a nightclub. What's your view on this story?
Well, this particular case sounds like something out of a horror movie. It is absolutely terrifying, and I really think it's one of those instances where these things aren't just, and the impacts of these kind of stories aren't just localised on the individual that unfortunately suffers such heinous acts, but also the wider community as well. Lots of young people go out on nights out in Cardiff, and you have to wonder how many other women now are going to be looking over their shoulder, deeply, deeply terrified that a similar thing might happen to them. I think the one slight positive from the situation is that the individual involved seems to have been given a slightly more strict sentence than we do see in other cases. There was an instance elsewhere in the country where an individual sexually assaulted 3 women and was given a suspended sentence. This individual seems to have got several years at least behind bars, and then of course hopefully he is deported back to Syria, I believe his country of origin is. But you know, we're seeing an endless drip of these kind of stories now, day after day after day, and we know what the reason behind this is. First of all, it's a failure to control the channel crisis, but secondly, it's the decision to not house those individuals who are unvetted in secure accommodation, but to actually put them in hotels, HMOs, right in the hearts of towns and cities, and allowing them to roam around freely. So there are two key driving forces behind this, and the government has done very little to grip either of them.
And you talk about the government's grip and the Ministry of Justice's grip as well. Foreign nationals making up 1 in 8 prisoners, and this number is rising very rapidly.
It's surging, and of course the thing that we need to realise here is that it's not just the illegal migration crisis that's bringing crime, but it's the open borders with legal migration that we've seen for far too long. You know, 11,000 nearly now foreign national offenders in prison. They'll probably cost us, each individual over the course of their sentences, about £2 billion. Again, there's a huge implication there, but there are certain nationalities that you have to kind of think, what is going on here? Why are there so many individuals living in this country from that nationality incarcerated? In Albania, for instance, representing nearly 10% of all those foreign nationals in prison. It's not just in the prison either, of course. We've got 19,000 foreign national offenders who have served some form of sentence, but then been re-released into communities pending deportations that never seem to happen. We've got the government claiming that they're deporting record numbers of foreign national offenders, but 5,000 really is just scratching the surface on the huge scale that we do have. We see about 35,000 foreign national convictions each and every year at the moment. And, I think the figures that have come out from the Ministry of Justice really do reflect that this is a situation getting out of control, because frankly, there shouldn't be a single foreign national in British prisons. There shouldn't be a single foreign national coming into our country, being allowed to come into our country.
Do you believe that, actually? Well, you clearly do, Robert, but it's an interesting debate, and I've had this with a number of people, in that if you deport a foreign criminal, if they've served none of their sentence or some of their sentence, there's no guarantee that they'll serve any of the rest of their sentence in their home country. And we're in a situation where if something dreadful happened to a member of my family, I would want that person to serve every minute of that sentence. I don't care where it is. But for example, in the situation with Hadish Kabatu last week, well, he has been sentenced to a year. He served around 3 months. When he goes back to Ethiopia, it's unlikely he'll serve any time. So actually, the net result of that, okay, he's back in Ethiopia, and rightly so, but at the same time, he won't have served anything near a year of a sentence for sexually assaulting 2 people.
No, I agree with that completely. And I think we need to focus on securing formal readmission treaties with countries of origin, so that if we are deporting foreign national offenders, there's a kind of mutual checking in to make sure that actually they're not just being allowed to wander the streets and live a life of rarity back in their home country, but they're actually being handed over to the authorities in Ethiopia in instance. I think that's what we can do. And Robert generally makes a good point today. He's emphasising that we've got to use a lot more of our levers, aid, tariffs, visas, to start actually strong-arming countries into playing ball with these formal treaties that mean that if we are deporting foreign national offenders back to their country of origin, they're not just being given sort of license to wander around and go back to life as normal. They are actually still serving some form of sentence.
Robert, thank you. Robert Bates, there, Research Director at the Centre for Migration Control. Another Labour MP, Graham Stringer, is going to be with me next to talk about Rachel Reeves. What do you think about her and Andrew and everything else we're talking about today? 0344 499 1000. Stay with us.
Big news coming this December. Our talkTV app is moving to the Talk app. You can watch, catch up and listen to all your favourite shows and podcasts anytime, anywhere, all on the Talk app. From Monday, 1st of December, the talkTV app will no longer exist, so don't miss out. So head over to your App Store or Google Play and search Talk now.
Across the UK, on DAB+, on YouTube, on the app, on your mobile, the home of common sense. This is Talk.
Thank you to Tad in Cambridge. She says, Peter, thank you for highlighting the deplorable killing in places like Sudan. Those who chose to ignore it should be called out at every opportunity, not allowed to pick and choose to suit a left-wing narrative or political expediency, says Tad. Thank you to another texter who says, whilst I'm sure Rachel Reeves is guilty of something, it is not in the same league as Rayner, Burnham and her are as thick as thieves. Well, let's speak to another Labour MP, Graham Stringer, who is Labour MP for Blakely and Middleton South. Graham, appreciate your time this morning. On Rachel Reeves, how big an issue is this? Is it about her judgment, her husband's judgment, the Prime Minister's judgment? Where do you see this?
It's both the Prime Minister's judgment and Rachel's judgment, I think. When something becomes an issue with a minister or even a member of Parliament, I think the responsibility of the leader is to sit down with the person who may have made a mistake, may have done something wrong, and say, let's get to the bottom of this. I need to know everything if I'm to help you and sort this out, or in the final analysis, sack you. But if you tell me things that aren't true, or you leave things out, then I will be unable to help you. So I think that side of it, where Rachel has not handed over all the available information, she's not checked, the Prime Minister's not checked, I think they're both culpable there.
You think they're both culpable? It's interesting in that a letter was put out, I think it was on Wednesday night, very late, to say nothing to see here. Independent ethics advisor has been given, is satisfied. There's no issue. And then, of course, there were more questions from the press, from the public, from parliamentarians, and the opposition, obviously, later on. Surely that should have been anticipated. I mean, my thought on this is it's probably not, I mean, you may disagree, Graham, but I don't think it's the world's biggest scandal. I don't think Rachel Reeves necessarily needs to resign. But the handling, the judgment, the anticipation of questions really wasn't something that was well handled by Number 10 or specifically Keir Starmer and Rachel Reeves as well.
It was like Sadaistical, trying to get to the bottom of it. Everybody makes mistakes. Some people try and cheat the system. Neither party, neither Rachel or the Prime Minister, got to the bottom of it. He was, I'm guessing this, so he's not told me this. My guess is he was desperate to keep his Chancellor of the Exchequer 4 weeks before the budget, so he wanted it out of the way, and therefore he cut corners. He didn't get to the bottom of it. And then Rachel, who'd said she was in favour of these registration rental regulatory schemes, forgot that it applied to her and didn't check whether that hers had been paid. So I think it's regrettable. I mean, in some senses, it is quite a sensitive political issue. I've spent a lot of the time I've been a Member of Parliament campaigning for schemes to regulate land laws, because there is some appalling behaviour by landlords. Not all landlords. Some are good and they provide a necessary service. Some don't. So I think for many of my constituents thinking about this, they will wonder at the price you can rent a fairly normal house out in South London. And they will also wonder if the Labour Party is so concerned about bad landlords and the regulation of them, why Rachel didn't sort it.
Yeah, it's a very good point as well. I wonder how much parliamentary time, in your opinion, should be spent in regard to Prince Andrew. Now, we know that he's not a prince anymore, and we know that the King has taken his titles away from him, Graham. But the Parliament could, in theory, spend time removing him from the line of succession. Is that something that Parliament should spend time doing, or actually, because it's not really that much of a possibility that 7 people are not going to make it and he's going to be next in line, should Parliament just say, actually, this is a done deal now, it's over?
I'd take the point wider than that. It would be the most unlikely scenario that is, I can't remember if he's 8th or 9th in line.
Eighth in line.
Yeah, 8th in line to the throne, that he was ever in a position to succeed. So probably not. Probably it's just another punishment for him, which I'm not against. He's behaved appallingly. And we still don't know a lot of things because he's refused to cooperate with the police.
Surely that's what he should do next.
Absolutely.
He should give all the information, all the emails, all the testimony, essentially, to the legal authorities and Congress on both sides, well, in America and indeed the law enforcement here in the UK, if that's appropriate.
Yeah, I agree with that completely. The point I was going to make is there is a broad point here. If you pick up any newspaper, almost any day of the week, you will find many column inches praising, criticising the royal family. I find it increasingly strange that the one part of our democracy where there isn't really freedom of speech on the royal family is the House of Commons. There's 650 MPs have got a self-limiting rule that we don't talk about the royal family. I think that is very strange and should be looked at. I think it's very strange indeed in a democracy.
Yeah, I think that's a very fair point. And that's something that parliamentarians put on themselves. Is it convention? Should it change? Can it change? What should happen, Graham?
Parliament can do what it wants. This is a constitutional monarchy. It is up to the Parliament, the House of Commons, to say what we want to do. It's a self-denying ordinance, really, and I think it's wrong. We talk about the monies going to the royal family, but they are the King or the Queen is head of state. The fact that elected people can't really talk about their behaviour should be changed.
Yeah. Graham Stringer, thank you. That's Graham Stringer, the Labour MP for Blakely and Middleton South. Howard's been in touch, says, I'm a mortgage broker. Reeves doesn't need a buy-to-let mortgage necessarily. She needs consent to let from her existing lender. This normally comes with a fee and or an increased rate. It's a temporary arrangement, normally for 1 year. If it becomes a permanent situation, she would need a BTL mortgage, buy-to-let mortgage. While on consent to let, you can't change your mortgage deal at all. So if your fixed rate finishes, you can't pick a new deal. Howard, thank you for that. I appreciate both you and Ian getting in touch on that. Loads of people getting in touch on Emily Thornberry, including Stephen Millings in Belfast. She was in Question Time stating that she could negotiate an amazing deal with the EU on Brexit, much better than the government of the time. Then she'd come back and lobby for that deal to be ignored. The woman is a dangerous, two-faced politician and should be ostracised at every opportunity, says Stephen. Let's talk to Matthew in Cheshire, who wants to talk about Prince Andrew and indeed Prince William. Matthew, you're very welcome to the programme. What would you like to say?
Isn't Graham very good?
Yes.
Because he just every time he comes on, he always just talks straight. And it's nice to hear that from a politician.
Common sense, and from a Labour politician as well. We don't hear enough of it.
I know. Yeah, I think the King has demoted Andrew because he knows there's a big grenade coming. There's something's going to happen. Obviously, the Americans are now asking him to go out to testify there.
Yeah.
There's more to this than meets the eye. I also think that not just the Queen, but the Princess of Wales have had their say over it, because you know these are women, and they must be absolutely ashamed. Because let's not deny it. He's been going sex parties. He's been doing all these things. He's been a fool. Randy Andy has caught up with him, hasn't it?
Well, it seems to have. The question is, how much more can there really be in all of this? I mean, there's so much in the public domain. This story's gone on now for a decade and a half. But still, there are loads of questions to which we don't have the answers, Matthew. What should he do now?
He'll either disappear somewhere, and he just really won't see him, let it'll all pass over. I don't think he'll go to America. I don't think he'll testify. I can't see the police digging in anymore. I think they'll just batten the hatchets down and hopefully it'll blow over. But if there's something else that comes out about Andrew and his dirty deeds, then I don't know. I don't know. It's unprecedented, isn't it?
Yeah, it is. It's hard to know where this... well, you're right. It's hard to know where this goes next. Matthew, thank you. Margaret's in Edinburgh and says, I think Keir Starmer is exactly what the country wants. How can Emily Thornberry say that with a straight face earlier on in your programme? Has she not been listening to us? Jerry says, Emily Thornberry just said Britain is in a mess with high debts and record high taxes. Didn't Starmer recently have a go at Farage because there's nothing positive to say about this country? Barbara's in London and says, morning Peter, great programme as always. Thank you, Barbara. I think the King has had his hand forced in really just banishing Andrew because of this, and about time. He and the Queen must have known about his disgusting behaviour, which seems prevalent in many areas, and did nothing about it. Him declaring he never met Virginia Giuffre. Why pay such a substantial amount to someone you've not met? It's ridiculous and further proves he's a liar, in Barbara's opinion. I'm sure Andrew would deny that. As far as him making any recompense by doing charity work is also ridiculous. If he did, it would be obvious it wouldn't help. It wouldn't be to help anyone. It would be to help himself. Good riddance. Let him disappear into the abyss. And Bill in Romsey says, morning Peter, as Andrew Windsor has lost all his titles even from the House of Lords, therefore Mandelson should lose his, or should he? Great show, says Bill in Romsey. Well, if you have an opinion on that, if you agree with Bill, let me know your thoughts. 0344 499 1000. Lots of calls, text, tweets and voice notes coming your way. We're also going to talk to Alex Wilson from Reform UK in just a minute about what is happening with Zara Sultana. Lots of people seem to want to talk about that as well. She called Nigel Farage a fascist, comparing him to Hitler, to Mussolini, to Franco. What do you think about that? Was that a fair thing for her to say, or is she just stirring up hatred against Nigel Farage? Someone, of course, who's been targeted in many, many different ways at different times. Let us know your thoughts on all of that. 0344 499 1000 is the number to call. We'll take more of your calls between now and 1 o'clock here on Talk.
across the UK. On DAB+, on YouTube, on the app, on your mobile. The home of common sense. This is Talk.
Good afternoon, this is Talk. I'm Peter Cardwell. Thank you so much for your company. There's loads to talk about and we're here right through to 1 o'clock today, so get your call in 0344 499 1000. In a second we'll talk about Zara Sultana. Farage is a danger and has the features of a fascist. She says she is the leader of the Your Party. Someone's asked me to call it the Your Party rather than Your Party, because it's not Your Party, it's just the party that's called Your Party, or the Your Party. I'm not sure where that sentence went, but anyway, lots to discuss on that. We'll also talk about Andrew more. Lots of people want to talk about that. We'll talk as well about the Royal British Legion volunteers abused by left-wing idiots while they put up Remembrance Day poppies in a town. Yes, really, Britain 2025. Loads to discuss between now and 1 o'clock. 0344 499 1000 is the number to call. As I say, you can text me 87222 with the word talk in your text. You can tweet me at talkTV, follow me at Peter Cardwell. You can, sorry, just had a cough there. You can send me a WhatsApp voice note on 0344 499 1000. You can also send me a WhatsApp text message on that number, or you can give me a ring on that number as well. We'll take more calls and thoughts from you very, very soon here on Talk, right through to 1 o'clock. This is Talk. Thank you to Bob in Cheltenham, who says, in relation to statistics of foreign nationals in prison, they're more likely to be remanded in custody because of their immigration status and lack of available accommodation than UK citizens. It doesn't necessarily mean more foreign nationals are committing crime, so that's a very interesting perspective from him. On what Emily Thornberry has been saying, Angela says name-calling is dangerous and the Speaker of the House should deal with these MPs who provoke violence against other MPs by ill-judged words. We'll talk about Zara Sultana in a second. Yeah, it was Bob who said, can you call it the Your Party? And thank you to Joe, who says, admirable, Peter Cardwell highlighting Nigeria and Sudan and the media lefty silence, good, honourable work. And Angie says, your monologue regarding Sudan and Nigeria really opened my eyes regarding this horrific situation these innocent people are facing. Thank you for this, and please continue to inform and talk about this. Peter, well, thank you for that. Let's talk about Zara Sultana. In fact, let's hear from her, because she spoke to the BBC, to a podcast that they have about Nigel Farage. This is what she said.
I do think he has all the features of a fascist politician, and I think it's important that we stop a fascist reform government.
Fascist.
When someone attacks trade union rights, when they are not supportive of minority communities, where they are trying to get us out of the ECHR so they can get away with anything and there is no state accountability, we can see what's happening across Europe, and that is a descent into fascism.
You're comparing Nigel Farage with Franco, with Mussolini, arguably with Adolf Hitler. Really?
I have legitimate concerns about what a Nigel Farage government would do to trade unionists, to working class communities, to minority communities, to LGBT people. And what I've seen in government is Nigel Farage and his colleagues, like I said, vote against trade union rights, vote against anything that would actually help our working class communities. So yes, he's a danger.
Well, we talked about this earlier on the programme on our debate desk with Andy Williams, and I think Gary is referencing Andy when he says one of your guests described Nigel Farage as divisive. I'd be interested to know if he thinks that politicians who flooded and continue to flood this country with migrants from the third world who are destroying the culture and traditional values of this country are divisive. I think quite a few politicians are divisive. I think politics in general is quite a divisive thing, because you're essentially saying, I'm right, you're wrong. Amanda says Zara Sultana and others like her are an utter disgrace. They should grow up and think before they speak. They bring shame on this country. Well, let's speak to one of Nigel Farage's party colleagues. His name is Alex Wilson. He is a Reform UK London Assembly member. Alex, thank you for joining me today. I appreciate it. I mean, I know what the answer to this question is going to be, but I've kind of got to ask it. Do you think Nigel Farage is a fascist?
Of course not. I mean, this accusation, it's completely ridiculous. You know, Nigel's political instincts are, you know, broadly libertarian. You know, Reform UK was set up as a party, initially in order to fight lockdown, which was the most authoritarian restriction on our civil liberties in peacetime. So the idea that Nigel is a fascist, is an authoritarian, is anything like that, is utterly ridiculous. It's for the birds. But it's these baseless smears that we see from the left more broadly. So not just Zara Sultana, I'll come on to her in a minute, but the left more broadly. You saw what happened at Labour conference. Starmer, Bridget Phillipson, Streeting, all of them using this language, saying we're far right, saying we're racist, and they're using that to try and create a culture or an environment where it is seen as acceptable to physically attack our volunteers. We've seen on our campaign days over the last few weeks an increasing level of abuse being given to our volunteers, and I've known of at least 2 instances where people have had hot coffee thrown at them. That's
outrageous. That is absolutely outrageous.
Yeah, that's happening now because figures on the left are using this kind of language to create that environment where it's now seen as acceptable to attack us, because we need to be stopped, is what they're arguing, and by any means possible. They can't win us.
I've got to be really clear, Alex, to keep us both on the right side of the law. Zara Sultana is not advocating any action that is not legal, but she is calling Nigel Farage a fascist. Why do you think she's doing that, Alex?
Well, I said because to try and make things difficult for us. Look, politics is all about robust debate, and we should be debating about the issues, not using baseless smears and name calling. But I think there's also a huge element of hypocrisy involved with Zara Sultana doing this. There's only 2 instances where a political party in Britain has been investigated by the Equalities and Human Rights Commission for racism. One was the BNP, and the second was Corbyn's Labour Party, Corbyn's anti-Semitic Labour Party, which she clearly was so happy about being part of. She's trying to recreate that with her new party. And if you want to criticise people, politicians, for trying to stir up and foment hate and division and extremism and racism, then just look at what's going on over the Gaza protest. Zara Sultana needs to look at herself in the mirror. She's the one being divisive. She's the one being extreme. She's the one ultimately being racist, because she wants to wipe the Israeli state off the map.
You think she's a racist?
I think she's an anti-Semite, absolutely.
Okay, I'm sure she would deny both. She would deny both those allegations of both racism and anti-Semitism. I do wonder, Alex, about the state of debate. I mean, she calls Nigel Farage a fascist. You're calling her a racist and anti-Semite. That's fine. That's your strongly held personal belief. I'm saying, to keep us all on the right side of the law, that Zara Sultana would deny both of those things. I mean, when people throw around those kind of words, how can we get this back? How can we make sure that politics has some form of civility about it, that people can have an honest debate, that you could go into a hall and debate Zara Sultana and not have those kind of allegations thrown at one another? I mean, they may well be accurate, but in terms of actually having a reasonable discussion with people, do you think we're far away from that at the moment?
I understand. I was just pointing out the hypocrisy if she's making those allegations when there are allegations that could be made back in the other direction. But no, you're right. What we need to do is try and get politics back to a more kind of civil and respectful level. Everyone who goes into politics does it because they have firmly held beliefs. They have an idea, a vision about how they want society and the country to be governed and run. And I think if we could get back to that, and whether it's arguing over the size of the state or the role for markets in this, or how we defend the nation from threats from within and from without, those kind of issues, that's what we should be talking about. And actually, you're right, it would be much better if we could get through political debate without name calling. Absolutely.
In terms of the Reform UK, do you think, in regard to the problems we have in politics, in regard to the division, although I've said a minute ago that I think politics, just by its nature, is divisive. You agree with one thing, you disagree with something else. We are divided on many, many issues. What role does Reform UK have in trying to unite people, do you think? Is that something that is actually one of your priorities? Because there are lots of people who are never going to agree with you.
Well, you're right, and as you said in your introduction, politics by its very nature, you are arguing about things. If everybody agreed, then there wouldn't be a need for politics in the first place. So yes, there's always going to be a level of division involved in having political debate. But as a party, you look at where we're drawing support from. We are drawing support from right across the political spectrum. Yes, a lot of the high-profile defectors that have joined us are former Conservatives, but a lot of the people that are voting for us, and if you look at these council by-elections week after week after week, we're the first party that's won 50 seats in council by-elections since the local elections back in May, and half of the seats that we're gaining are coming direct from Labour. So, as a party, we are trying to be beyond the traditional understandings of left and right, and bring people together. Or what we want to do is bring people together who want to have the best future for their family, for their community, and for our country. And I think that transcends traditional left-right divides.
What do you think, just on another matter, I'm sure you have an opinion on it, in regard to Andrew and the fact that he has lost all his titles? What should he do now, do you think, Alex?
I just think he should disappear into the ether, and if we never hear from him again, it will be too soon.
You don't think he should come forward to law enforcement, for example, and tell everything that he knows about Jeffrey Epstein? That's what I think he should do on both sides of the Atlantic, and then go into obscurity.
Well, perhaps. But it's a really tragic episode, and he's potentially committed some heinous acts. Perhaps we do need to get to the bottom of it, have some kind of inquiry. Perhaps not. I don't know. But ultimately, he's history now. And as I say, the sooner we hear from him, or if we ever hear from him again, it will be too soon.
Okay.
He's gone, his history is finished.
OK, thank you. Alex Wilson there, Assembly Member for Reform UK in the London Assembly. Andrew Mountbatten-Windsor, of course, denies all of the allegations against him. Lots of messages coming in. We've had loads of texts, so I'm just going to read out a few of those for a second. Amanda says, Andrew will now have plenty of time to reflect on his life and the error of his ways. Perhaps in time he will put the past behind him and enjoy the shadows. Sharon in Staffordshire says, I think Reeves needs to resign. She's the Chancellor of our country. If she can do this, she knew she needed a licence, yet she ignored it. No wonder our country is in such a state because of Reeves, says Sharon. Zarina says, your guest said that if a similar scandal had been for a Tory, everyone would be calling for resignations. I recall a certain Mayor Johnson was dogged by illicit affairs and favours, and he went on to be toasted as Prime Minister. The public are fed up with the spin. Another person says, I think it's not down to the letting agents to tell Rachel Reeves she needs a licence. Anyone planning on renting out a property should do their own due diligence. The same way as when you plan any work on your home, it's down to you to do the legwork and not the builder. Well, it's interesting you mentioned that, actually. We know from those emails that are now all in the public domain that the estate agents did tell what looks to be Rachel Reeves' husband that the licence was needed, but then didn't go forward with the application. They said it was because someone moved jobs and it just sort of fell through the net. Of course, that's not great when it's someone as high profile as Rachel Reeves. Another person says the politicians get into government and act like privileged school children. Just look at how they behave in the Houses of Parliament. More and more politicians abuse the system and then only apologise when they get caught. One rule for us, one rule for them. They have a manifesto, but once in power, push their own political agenda, i.e. recognising a Palestinian state or the push for renewables. Who voted for these? Final one for the meantime. Mark in Coventry says, you may have Khan as your mayor. I've got Sultana as my MP. Looks as if we're both up a creek without a paddle. That is Mark in Coventry. Let's hear a few voice notes. Matt in Hove now about what Andy Williams said about lying on CVs.
Peter, Matt in Hove here. To sit and listen to Andy Williams say that almost everybody lies on their CV is an absolute disgrace. I run a headhunting company and I have seen tens of thousands of CVs and conducted tens of thousands of background checks and references. Get him to correct that immediately, because it's total nonsense. Typical political commentator, never been anywhere running a successful business. Absolutely disgraceful comment.
Matt, Andy Williams has run a successful business. He is a senior director in a big communications firm, public affairs firm called Penta, and he does look at CVs and he has interviewed lots of people. I disagree with him that every person lies in their CV. I have tried very, very hard to always tell the truth in my CV, but you know, some people don't. I think it was probably a bit of an exaggeration, but I think a lot of people do tell a few porcupines in their CV. The one that really annoyed me was at school, actually, UCAS forms a million years ago, and people would make up stuff and say they were in the choir and they were in the school play and all the rest of it, when I'd done those things and they hadn't. Chris has been in touch on Peter Mandelson.
Hey, Chris from Epsom. Don't forget with Mandelson, he has not been sacked. He has been recalled, which means he's still being paid to this day as the ambassador to Washington.
That's a very interesting point, actually, and journalists are certainly asking the Foreign Office when he'll stop being paid. Of course, if they get rid of him, he could claim unfair dismissal, which does seem ridiculous, but there we are. Lynn says, yesterday you had a woman who sounded about the same age as me saying she had lost sleep because of the way the UK is and wondering where to go. I've had the same thoughts, the same depressive moments. However, I came to the realisation, as of many others, that that is what they want. We go, they take over. No, we are winning 1 inch at a time. We will have a good, free country again. Take it one step at a time, one day at a time. Every day I breathe, eat and take a walk in the beautiful English countryside. Don't give in. At present, it would be difficult to find a Western country that is not facing the same issues, says Lynn. Well, that is an optimistic and defiant note on which to end this segment. We'll talk in just a second more to you. We'll take calls, voice notes, texts, and any other way you want to communicate with me, but just after the break here on Talk.
Big news coming this December. Our talkTV app is moving to the Talk app. You can watch, catch up and listen to all your favourite shows and podcasts anytime, anywhere, all on the Talk app. From Monday, 1st of December, the talkTV app will no longer exist, so don't miss out. So head over to your App Store or Google Play and search Talk now.
Across the UK, on DAB+, on YouTube, on the app, on your mobile, the home of common sense. This is Talk.
Yvonne is in Cheshire and has given me a ring on 0344 499 1000. Yvonne, you're very welcome to the programme. What would you like to say?
Hello, Peter.
Hi there.
Thank you very much. Hi, good to speak to you.
You too, Yvonne.
Yeah, I just don't buy this, what the estate agent is saying.
Yes.
Because I've read the email exchange between Nick Joycey and the letting agent, and the letting agent said it was the property manager who left abruptly, and basically it got missed. Okay.
Yeah, it fell through the cracks essentially. Yeah, I read those emails too. Yeah.
But on their website, they have a chap called Wesley Carney.
Do you know what, Yvonne? Let's just be really careful about what we say about individual people.
He's a letting manager on their website.
Okay.
And underneath it says, our close-knit team use a comprehensive management system which enables all members of the team to be aware of issues regarding your property.
Okay, well, it's absolutely clear. And in fairness to the estate agents, I'm not going to talk about individual people, but as far as the estate agents...
That's fine. Okay, but these are high-profile clients.
Yeah.
And they seem to bypass their usual processes because that's what it says in the emails. They did things by email.
Yeah.
And if you look at I believe it was Rachel Reed's husband, who's, he's a high-profile guy.
Yeah, he's a senior civil servant. Yeah.
Yeah, he's had some great jobs. And what they did in their emails, it said quite clearly that you have to name all the people who legal owners need to be named. And Rachel Reed's husband, Nick Joyce, I believe he's called, said, "I will get back to you." That was the first thing. On the last email, when the last email, he said, "We will thank you. We'll have you fill in the application for the selective lease."
Yeah.
They were then sent an updated spreadsheet of all the costs by the agent. And as you said just before, how can they miss? I would notice.
I would certainly notice £954 I hadn't been charged. Yvonne, it's a really good point, and you've clearly looked into this in detail.
Yeah.
The estate agent has apologised and basically said it's a fair cop. This fell through the cracks and we screwed up here. Do you have any sympathy for Nick Joyce and Rachel Reeves?
Absolutely none. But can I just make one other point?
Go for it.
These are. It's a family small business. They've been in there, I think it's over 100 years. They've got fantastic reviews all over the internet about how great their service is and how they're all over everything. So I just don't understand how somebody like the Chancellor of the Exchequer cannot basically work out that their total certificates and all the hoops they had to jump through to let the property, which came to roughly £1,367.
Yeah.
How she couldn't notice that £900 was missing from that bill.
It's a very good point, and I think all those points and those questions will continue to be asked. Yvonne, thank you.
Well, I think the journalists need to,
there's more digging to be done.
For a week.
Yvonne, I would imagine there'll be a lot in the press tomorrow about this, and indeed about Andrew too. Thank you for your thoughts. Let's hear a voice note from Tristan.
I'm very pleased actually that you have actually highlighted what is happening in Nigeria and Sudan. But the thing is I want to know is that considering we do have Islamists here and we know what they're like, why aren't they being deported? I find it, and why can't people speak about it? It's like radical Islamists is not allowed to be spoke about. We know they're there, we know what they want to do, but yet we don't do anything. And we can quite categorically see what's happening in Nigeria. And if they had the majority here, they could quite easily start doing some serious damage. I mean, every day we hear we hear crimes daily now from migrants, and yet deportations don't happen. I'm sure if I committed a crime in America or somewhere else where I was, I'd probably deported straight away. It's disgraceful.
Well, thank you for that. And listen, we talk about radical Islam on this programme. We talk about those marches. We talk about the fact that some of those people are radical Islamists. We also reported last weekend, of course, as well, that there was that horrific show of strength in East London in Tower Hamlets as well. And I'm all for that, Tristan. If those people are not British nationals, well, yes, they should be deported. And if they're British nationals, they should be arrested and charged with glorifying terrorism, because that is what they are doing. Mark in Lincolnshire has been in touch about Christians being eradicated. Mark, you're very welcome to the programme. What would you like to say?
Hi there, Peter.
Hi there.
Hi there, yeah. I mean, just picking up from your voice note, really. I mean, yeah, it's quite shameful, really, that it just never gets talked about this. I mean, this has been going on for quite some time. I became aware of the Nigerian situation, and I did mention it to you a couple of times on air, I think.
Yeah, you have, yeah.
And that was over the summer, early summer, I think. And And that was watching a video from, there's a channel that exists, Christian News Network, and that's kind of what alerted me to it. And I thought, what the heck's this about? So I had a look at it and came across this video of this priest in a village, and there's basically just dead bodies everywhere.
Yeah.
And he's holding a dead woman, and he's basically just crying, and he's just begging for help. He's just asking, Christian nations to help them.
Why does the West not care, Mark?
Well, the Jews aren't bombing them. That's one of the reasons. And the second reason, they just hate Christianity at the end of the day.
Is that honestly it? You think is as straightforward as that? In fairness to Yvette Cooper, she has spoken about Sudan. The UK has given a small amount of money. Emily Thornby says a large amount of money. It wasn't. It was about £5 million, which is nothing in comparison to what the government's resources are in regard to Sudan and the crisis there. But specifically in regard to Nigeria, do you think it's simply because people don't care about Christians?
Well, they've just given. You say $5 million they've given?
I think it's something like that. Yeah.
Yeah, well, they've just given $10 million to Muslims for burning down one of their own or setting fire to one of their own mosques. So that tells you exactly what.
I don't know the details of that, Mark, but yeah, let's.
At the end of the day, the reality is Christians are persecuted everywhere. We're persecuted in this country. You're mocked left, right, and centre. People care if because I was quite defensive of the Israeli state and Jewish people here during all this. And people care about that. People will listen to you talk about that. But you start talking about being persecuted as a Christian and the mocking that you receive as a Christian. Nobody cares. Nobody gives a stuff about that.
Yeah.
It's quite interesting. I mean, I've said this to you, I think, in the past. Certainly said it to one of the presenters on here. If you have a discussion with somebody, particularly somebody from the left, who basically run the establishment, and these are the people that literally vitriolly hate Christianity, because to them it represents everything that they hate. Destroying Christianity was always at the top of destroying the Western society, the capitalist society. Because it's all interlinked, because if we are a Christian nation at the end of the day, most Western countries are. So you have to get rid of Christianity, and they've done a pretty good job of that. But, when you get involved in debates with, people on the left, and you start talking to them about issues, and they will always come back, they'll start mocking you, they'll start...
Yeah, and it does seem that Christianity, is one of those things that people feel it's okay to mock in a way that they wouldn't mock Islam. Mark, thank you for that. I appreciate your thoughts on all of that. Lots more thoughts on Rachel Reeves as well. John in Upminster says Reeves should receive exactly the same treatment under the law that you or I would have received if we'd done the same thing. So it's an absolute certainty that the full force of the law would be down to us, down on us like a ton of bricks. She may be Chancellor, but in the eyes of the law, there should be absolutely no difference. Great show. I am fed up, says John in Upminster. Dave in Walthamstow says, great show, Peter. Thank you, Dave. Sultana calling Farage racist and a fascist. This is actually her opinion, but people who do use this kind of language are actually showing how stupid they really are. They're really only describing themselves and are more divisive than anybody else. In my mind, that opinion only shows they're jealous of his position in the country. Michelle says, morning, Peter. I think there'll be a Pandora's box opening soon on Prince Andrew, or just on Andrew. She says he's not Prince Andrew anymore, of course. Got to get used to that. Tracy in Wakefield says, I agree with Mark in Glasgow, we spoke to you a bit earlier on. Anytime there's something embarrassing for Starmer, a news story takes its place. That's just the nature of news as well. I thought Mark was... I took some of what he was saying, but I think I disagreed with most of it. News stories just take over. People get sick of news stories. We had people telling us this morning, we're talking too much about Andrew. Maybe that's true, but actually people do want to talk about it. We're still getting lots of messages about it. Another person says the war in Sudan is so bad. Bloodstained ground is visible from satellite cameras. I've seen that footage, certainly. No protests on the streets of London, though. Taff in Dover says, regarding the Chancellor, we have MPs renting their house out to other MPs, which we pay the rent for. Are they obeying the rules, or if not, will they try and brazen it out, hoping not to get caught? Says Taff in Dover. And one more before the break from Jane He says perhaps the King did this to save the monarchy because he has become unpopular recently with many people. Now he needs to remove this government. He won't because he seems to be on the same page as the PM. Well, the King doesn't really have the power to remove the government. He has some power, but he doesn't have all that power. We're going to talk about a different story in just a second because Royal British Legion volunteers were abused by left-wing idiots while they put up Remembrance Day poppies in a town. Yes, really, this is just an absolutely horrendous thing. So many people. I was actually in Victoria Station in London on Thursday morning. I was dropping someone off to go to Gatwick, the Gatwick Express, and it was full of very, very wonderful people, volunteers and officers and soldiers, cadets as well. There were people, actually, believe it or not, one of the commentators who's on this station, the Labour guy, Paul Richards, was former Labour advisor. He was there selling poppies, and it was wonderful to see so many people buying poppies, so many people wanting to sell poppies. I'm fairly sure, I think I missed him, but Al Kearns, who is one of the MOD ministers, Minister for Veterans, he was there as well. I didn't see him, but I was told he was there at one point. So yes, it is great that people sell poppies. Loads of people right across the country, of course, give up their time, they volunteer. I'm wearing a poppy, I'm going to continue doing that. And people who criticise people for doing so, like, it's your choice whether you do or not. Personally, I think people should, but nonetheless, this story is one you're going to want to hear because it is grim, and Philip Ingram is going to give us his view on it in just a second here on Talk.
Across the UK, on DAB+, on YouTube, on the app, on your mobile, the home of common sense. This is Talk.
Well, thank you to everybody who has been in touch, including Leslie. He says your mortgage company usually just asks you to pay a fee if you want to let your property. Lots coming in on that. AJ says if Reeves is fine, she'll just get us to pay for it instead, or through some trickery of accounting, find a way of being personally affected, like laying responsibility on her husband. Well, we'll see what she says and does. Another person says either Rachel Thieves has to be prosecuted like any other landlord, or the selective licensing requirements need to be abolished. John in Woodford says, thank you for talking about Sudan and Nigeria. As a Jew, Christianity must be saved or all Judeo-Christian religions will cease to be in Africa, and after Africa next is Europe. That is if Europe isn't already lost through political means versus by guns as we see in Africa. That's John in Woodford, so thank you for that. Kev says, actually I've read that out before. Margaret says, Peter, thank you for highlighting the situation in Sudan and Nigeria, which explains succinctly the genocide against the Christians. And it seems anyone who gets in the way of Islamists, will the pro-Palestinian marchers shriek their condemnation of this situation? I wait with bated breath, says Margaret. Well, thank you for that. I want to talk about another story. This is Royal British Legion volunteers abused while putting up poppies and Union Jack flags in a seaside town. This is Penarth in South Wales, where they were allegedly met with abuse and threats as they placed poppies and flags on a lamppost ahead of Remembrance Day. When you hear what Karen Jones says, she's a volunteer, and she says, in a small friendly town such as ours, you do not expect poppy appeal volunteers to get abuse when putting up memorial lamppost poppies and flags for the remembrance period. Our volunteers were approached this morning and met with abuse and threats to come back and take the poppies and flags down. The Royal British Legion poppy appeal is not political. It is to remember the men and women who paid the ultimate sacrifice so people can have free speech. Well, the police were asked about this, and South Wales Police said it is currently investigating an alleged public order offence which took place on the Windsor Road in Penarth on Sunday the 26th of October. Well, I want to talk to Philip Ingram about this. He is a former senior military intelligence officer. Philip, this should not happen. This is just a grim, horrible thing for people who were commemorating those who have given their lives for our freedom. What do you think about this?
You're 100% right. It should not happen. It shows a wider malaise in society where respect for what has gone on before to give people the freedoms that they enjoy just seems to have been forgotten completely. And we saw that whenever there were poppy sellers in the stations of London were abused last year. I haven't heard of any stories this year so far, but I expect it to happen. We've seen that in the way protesters have gone and defaced various cenotaphs around the country, and including in Whitehall in the past. And it's something that society needs to be very cognizant of and try and find some way of stopping this before that malaise gets worse.
It is entirely up to people whether they wear a poppy or not. I wear a poppy because I want to. I wear it because I think it's an important thing. I wear it because a member of my family, my grandfather's brother, was shot down he was an RAF navigator. He was shot down over Germany in the Second World War. I was very privileged to visit his grave, which is very well maintained by the Commonwealth Graves Commission. It is outside Berlin. I visited that in 2012. And the fact that people are abused simply for putting up poppies and flags, I think just says so much about our society, does it not, Philip? It says so much about the fact that we are so divided and that people feel it's all right to say to people, well, you're putting up the flag of the country, you're putting up something which commemorates those who've given their life for this country, but they feel it's okay to abuse people to do that. If you want to silently or peacefully protest something like that, well, you've a right to do it because that's the freedom that people fought for. But the fact they feel they can do it with such impunity, that to me speaks for the lack of authority in this country. It speaks to a lack of decorum, and it speaks to a lack of respect as well. What do you think?
Oh, again, you're 100% right, and that lack of respect is at every level. You look at the commentary that we're getting out of schools where teachers have real difficulty with pupils and unruly pupils and having discipline in schools. We see the way individuals react to the police and when there's police instructions and the abuse that the police get. We see that when it comes to other blue light staff or ambulance staff and our fire brigade staff as they're dealing around. I, as an ex-serviceman, have been spat at in the street because I was wearing my medals walking down the street.
That's appalling. That's appalling.
And people have abused me. Now, I gave a contract to the country that ultimately my life could be put on the line for people to have the freedoms to do that sort of thing. But it is a complete and utter lack of respect, and that is something that we have to stop and reverse in society, because if that continues, then we will see a complete and utter breakdown of society. And I don't know how we're going to stop it and how we're going to reverse it.
Philip, thank you. That's Philip Ingram there, who is a former senior military intelligence officer. I want to have respect for the police. I want to have respect for the blue light services. I certainly respect the ambulance, and I was in an ambulance myself a few months ago. I had some problems and I was dealt with very, very well, and brought back to health in part by the brilliant ambulance staff and the NHS. I'm also in a situation where, of course, like so many people, I 100% respect the fire brigade and the great job they do. The police, it's a different matter. I want to respect the police. I want them to do their job. There are so many people, especially in the rank and file, who do an excellent job and try to do an excellent job through the way that they can do it. But I'm afraid there's one police force, and you've heard me talk about this every day this week, and that is Avon and Somerset Police, because it is now 126 days. I'm going to keep on banging on about this. It's 126 days since the singer, I use the term loosely, from Bob Vylan, Pascal Robinson Foster, shouted "death, death" to the IDF. Now, I have an open standing bid for Sarah Crew, who you can also see on the screen there if you're watching the screen. She is the Chief Constable of Avon and Somerset Police, to come on my programmes to tell me why Pascal Robinson Foster hasn't been interviewed, hasn't been cautioned, hasn't been arrested, why a file hasn't been sent to the Crown Prosecution Service. Now, in fairness to Avon and Somerset Police, they got back to us, I think, on Thursday, saying that, look, we've got some more information from the CPS. We're analysing that at the moment. It's been a heck of a long time, 126 days, and very, very straightforwardly, on live national television, a clip seen literally by millions of people, and more people because it was then reported on, he shouted "death, death" to the IDF. This is open and shut. This is so straightforward. And the problem is, as I say, I want to be respectful towards the police. But when I see what I, in my strongly held personal view, think is a version of two-tier policing, certainly in this regard, justice delayed is justice denied. It would be easy to think that they're just running the clock down on this. They've got about another 50 days or so until they have to make a decision, or else this will be dropped. I would urge Sarah Crew, A, please come on my programmes and talk about this, and B, make a decision, do something soon about this, make an arrest, or at least caution and interview Pascal Robinson Foster, because he's an anti-Semite and he shouted "death, death" to the IDF. We know what needs to happen. Come on, Sarah, sort it out. I'm going to keep talking about this until an arrest is made, or until something happens from Avon and Somerset Police. I'm going to do it every single day. I'm doing Drive all next week. I'm doing my programme tomorrow. I'm going to talk about it every day next weekend as well, until an arrest is made. Until the Avon and Somerset Police listen to me, listen to the viewers and listeners to this programme who want this sorted. Lots more to discuss. More on Andrew and your calls, texts, tweets and voice notes next here on Talk.
Big news coming this December. Our talkTV app is moving to the Talk app. You can watch, catch up and listen to all your favourite shows and podcasts anytime, anywhere, all on the Talk app. From Monday, 1st of December, the talkTV app will no longer exist, so don't miss out. So head over to your App Store or Google Play and search Talk now.
Across the UK, on DAB+, on YouTube, on the app, on your mobile, the home of common sense. This is Talk.
Well, thank you so much to everybody who has been in touch, including John, actually. And John, I'm going to take your text, or your tweet, I should say, absolutely head on. John says, WTF, we know what that means. What do you mean to say, was that a fair thing to say? This was in regard to Zara Sultana calling Nigel Farage a fascist. I said, you know, what do you think? Was that a fair thing to say? You know very well it isn't, and you should be condemning this abhorrent language she is using. John, I don't think it was a fair thing to say, but some people might, and I was merely asking a question of people who may have a different opinion. This is the home of free speech, and I want to get all opinions from all sides. I don't think Nigel Farage is a fascist at all. I think it's a silly thing to say. I think it's inaccurate, first of all, and also I think that Zara Sultana is stirring up hatred by doing so. She would deny that, of course, but to merely ask the question, are you saying I shouldn't have done that? I'm not sure I agree with you, John. Thanks, Angie, says your monologue on regarding Sudan, Nigeria has really opened my eyes. Thank you for that. Julia says, isn't Rachel Reeves' husband employed by Starmer as well? No. He is a civil servant, so Nick Joyce, he is a Director General, so one down from the top civil servant in each government department is a permanent secretary, and then one down from that is a Director General, so he's a very senior civil servant in DEFRA, which is the Department of Environment, Food and Rural Affairs. So he has got that job as a civil servant. He's not employed by Starmer, and that's not a political appointment, that's a civil service appointment. He would have served under the Conservatives as well. Bob says, I want to hear from other landlords in Southwark who fail to get licences inadvertently, says Bob in Surrey. If there are any of them who want to ring in the next 12 minutes, you're very welcome. I think that's quite a specific request, Bob, but I will ask people to do that. And finally on Twitter, Northern Man says Rachel Reeves didn't notice that an item of expenditure representing about 0.5% of her household income had gone through. Extrapolating this to the UK economy tells us that she isn't interested in anything below 15 billion. Good to know, says Northern Man. And let's talk more about Andrew. Duncan Larkham is with us, former royal editor of The Sun. Duncan, thanks for joining me this afternoon.
Hi, Peter. Hi.
What should Andrew do now, if anything?
I think the only thing he really should do is to cooperate with the American Congress that are looking into the claims and the behaviour of his good friend Jeffrey Epstein.
That is what he should do, certainly, I think. I mean, does he just go off into obscurity? Does he accept his fate? Now, apparently sanguine about this. We're told that word was used in some of the reporting. Do you think that's true? Because clearly he must be very, very angry about this, and to some degree anyway, or at least annoyed about it.
Well, I think he was probably surprised by it, because we all were. The fact that the king finally decided to strip his own brother of the title of prince. I mean, that's an unprecedented thing, as we know. It's sort of a death by 1,000 cuts. I can remember writing about Prince Andrew and Jeffrey Epstein's friendship back in 2011. And it just beggars belief that it's taken this long for the royals to actually take some action, rather than support him by funding his out-of-court settlement, and actually do something that has been greeted publicly with widespread aplomb. I think King Charles has done absolutely the right thing, as painful as it must have been for him.
What do you think it says that we've got a situation where the only people who've actually been held to any account for this are Ghislaine Maxwell, who's in prison, and I'm very happy that she is in prison. She's a sex offender, she's a paedophile, she's a horrible, horrible person, and should be in prison and should never get any form of pardon or anything from Trump. We've got Andrew, who has been basically cancelled as a royal, a little bit Peter Mandelson, who has lost his role as ambassador to Washington. What do you think it says that there are 3 British people who've been held to account to some degree for Epstein? There don't seem to be too many Americans being held to account for this.
No, I mean, that's a fair point. And I think, you know, the questions that are being asked of the likes of Peter Mandelson and Andrew. I keep wanting to call him Prince Andrew.
Yeah.
I won't. Mr. Windsor.
We'll get used to it eventually.
Yeah, but the questions that are being asked to those people have been asked to them, and obviously with Ghislaine, as you say, it does seem a bit odd because there's people like Bill Clinton and of course Donald Trump himself that have been named in various associations with Epstein and photographs. So I don't know whether it's bash the British, but certainly over here, I think the right thing has been done, stripping the royal family of one of its worst assets.
Duncan, thank you. Appreciate that. That is Duncan Larkham there. He's the former royal editor of The Sun. I want to talk to Dave in Essex now about Rachel Reeves. Dave, you're very welcome to the programme. What would you like to say?
Oh, yes, good morning. Oh,
hello there.
Well, Starmer knew that Rachel Reeves was a liar when she said her position in the bank on her CV, and she was nowhere near that position.
Well, she was an economist for the Bank of England, just not for as long as she said she was. So she definitely told a few fibs on her CV. But he believed her certainly on Wednesday when she said, "This isn't that big a deal. We'll just get over it and move on."
Starmer believes Macron when they made that deal with the 1 in, 1 out. And Macron was going to stop the boats in France. Starmer believes in fairies at the bottom of the garden. He isn't with it.
Okay, listen, thanks for your thoughts, Dave. Appreciate that. That's Dave in Essex there. Let's get a few voice notes now. Moz has been in touch. Let's hear what Moz has to say.
Good afternoon, Cardi P and talkTV family. Moz from somewhere in Northamptonshire. I'm a reform councillor. And I sent a message in to you guys a week or two ago that we received a lot of isms during our campaign. I'm a gay person. I was called all the homophobic names in the world and told I was also homophobic. And my ward colleague, Leon, he also got a lot of racism towards him, and he's mixed race. He's part Jamaican. And he got all the names you can think of thrown at him, all by the left. So the nice party aren't all that nice. They're hypocrites.
Thank you very much, Moz. Thanks also to Renee, who has sent in a message saying Ghislaine is in an open prison now, no walls or locked in cells. She goes out to classes, etc. She isn't in prison. Thank you to Bob, who is in Hartlepool, who says we've suffered decades of terrible political leadership in the West by people who put their misguided and dangerous ideals of globalism and multiculturalism ahead of Western democratic principles. It's led to uncontrolled immigration, which is destroying British, European and American society and values, and it has rendered our current crop of politicians useless and directionless. They live in fear of being branded racist or, worse still, Islamophobic. So they stay mute on genocide of Christians in Sudan and Nigeria. Christianity has become a dirty word for many leaders. The left has tied it in with that other C word that seems to invoke hatred, colonialism. Our politicians need to stand up for what's right instead of pandering to violent Islamists and their useful idiots on the left. Let's hear another voice note from Sharon.
Morning, Peter. I'm a 61-year-old, well, not pensioner, but I'm knocking up that way. I'm going out today to a migrant hotel to meet up with a lot of like-minded people throughout the country that believe that we should stand up for our rights in this country. While we're there, we have got left-wing people shouting, calling us fascists. I don't know where they get the fascists from, because even the police turn round and say they like to be on stand up where we are, where it's all nice and people are happy and they're waving the flag and people are pipping us, whereas the lefties are shouting all this bile at people going by that's not pipping them, and it's just crazy. They're just there. I just wish they'd just all go away and just, I don't know, just do something else, because we're not going to let them take this country away from us. It's ours. We're quite willing to help anybody, but we're not going to let somebody just march in here and take us country away from us. Good show though, Peter. Have a nice day.
You too, Sharon. Thank you. Let's hear a final voice note from Polly.
Morning, Peter. Polly, the lady from Advance here, the lady talkTV loves to hate. Thousands of English churches and chapels have been burnt in the last couple of years. Funny how that's never covered on television or grants given. And let's have the facts. Great Britain was founded on Judeo-Christian principles. That's Western civilization. And now people are behaving surprised when Islamic states start wiping out Christians. Unbelievable. I still say it, God bless you all, and I live in hope that you'll remember that Advance UK actually exists. Bye.
Polly, thank you. Advance UK absolutely exists. It is a political party. It's been set up, and you're welcome to send in a voice note or give me a ring anytime you like, Polly. Jules in Bristol says, talking of the lawbreakers, am I right in thinking that posing falsely as a solicitor is illegal? If so, another one in this government has got away with it by writing it out. In fairness to Jonathan Reynolds, he did correct the record in Parliament, but yes, he did say he was a solicitor when he wasn't. None of them will fall on their sword, says Jules, showing utter lack of integrity and moral compass. Stan the man from Cheshire says, whose name is on the rental agreement? If it's Rachel Reeves, she has to take the punishment. However, there's no mention of her husband in the situation. Is he liable as well? Well, I'm nearly sure he sent those emails and it was redacted, but I mean, this is such a stupid thing, but it was redacted, so in black, and it was short, so it looked to me like a Nick rather than a slightly longer Rachel. There we are. That is my Sherlock Holmes abilities there. Trevor in Harrow says, Peter, it's all very well for Graham Stringer saying we can't criticise the royal family. His party find it hard to discuss the nationalities and religion of grooming gangs in constituencies where Labour control. Bridie says, if all Labour MPs were like Graham Stringer, it would be hard to overlook voting for them. Straight, realistic, what we need. Gordon says, hi Peter, Zara Sultana comes across as very dangerous, a student-type, immature MP. It is people like her who say the things she does that get people hurt, a very, very dangerous woman. Mark in Anglesey says, it's not just Zara Sultana saying this, it's all the Labour Party. It's irresponsible, it's dangerous, putting a target on Nigel and his followers' backs. They've learned nothing from the Charlie Kirk murder. Dan in Kent, our local pub has a green area owned by the council opposite and cared for by a volunteer. He puts tributes to remembering the fallen. He got verbally abused the other day and took down the flags. Thank goodness they're back, lest we forget. Hilton in St Albans says Zara Sultana is like an immature sixth form student excuse me, with her identity politics and incoherent ramblings, laughingly attempting to portray herself as a serious politician. Together with Jeremy Corbyn, their leftover party is a danger to democracy. Thank you to Richie in West Yorkshire. Says the name calling against Nigel Farage that the other parties indulge in is childish, but is not usually dangerous other than to themselves and the people who voted for them. In fact, if anything, it elevates reform to greater heights. However, like naughty children, they can go too far, as the woman from your party labelled Nigel Farage as a fascist. Ed Davey is an unfunny clown and Starmer is a useless PM, but likening someone to Hitler and Mussolini is homophobic when clearly they're homophobic and clearly they're not, should result in a severe enough reprimand to ensure they don't